Counting down the last 20 seconds before our show number 800. Woohoo, Alan Long, indeed. And you see the gang standing by, some of the super Fuzzy standing by as we get this one across the starting line. Welcome, everybody. Our show number 800. Live from San Francisco at Sailing Illustrated, our show number 800. I'm your host, Tom Eamon, and with me is your co-host, the Commodore of the Beach Street Yacht Club, Julia Vedekint, and we are in Studio B as usual. And we have Super Fuzzy now up to 8 of them, 8 of the 20 who are voting today for our inaugural Person of the Year. Clark Chapin there in the upper left corner, Rick Bannerow, Alistair Murray down in Australia, Magnus, the magnificent Wheatley over in the UK, Gordon Smith in Denmark, Graham Sweeney is there in Scotland, Hamish Ross down in the lower left in Auckland. Or are you at Auckland, Hamish? Give us a thumbs up, or are you out at your batch? I don't know what that means. And Pedro Foiling Sailor, a.k.a. Peter Stevenson, they've joined us so far. They're going to be live voting for our Person of the Year 2024, our inaugural. We've never done this before. Yacht Racing Person of the Year. And I want to thank all the Super Fuzzy, and indeed all of you who are regular viewers, because the nominations came from all of you, and then the Super Fuzzy have been whittling it down to the 6 nominees we'll tell you about in a few minutes, and then they're going to vote, do their final voting. Few of the Super Fuzzy are not able to join us today, and they've already cast their votes. And Clark Chapin, there in the upper left corner, is the scrutineer. He is the electioneer, the retired engineer that he is at Generous Motors, and he's got spreadsheets and polls, and I'm not sure what all, Julia.
He are an engineer.
He are an engineer. He is indeed. Welcome, everybody. To kick this one off, Julia, do you know who that is?
Oh gosh, I don't know right offhand. No.
I'm going to turn the Fuzzy's mic up. Mic's up. Anybody ID the person?
Tom Lewick.
Exactly, Alistair. You're exactly right. That is Tom Lewick, and we want to wish him today. That's his lovely wife, Barbara.
Ah, yes.
Happy 94th birthday. Today is Tom's 94th. He's was the founder of Scuttlebutt, of the Sailing Scuttlebutt, the newsletter par excellence here in this country, now run by his son, Craig Lewick. And Tom, by the way, and this is apropos of fires, and especially in the Palisades and Pacific Palisades, Barbara and Tom lived for many, many years in Pacific Palisades. And I've not talked to Tom or Barb direct in the last couple of days, but I saw Craig Lewick, their son's post. They grew up in the family home in the Palisades, Julia. And, you know, lots and lots of their friends and former neighbors, because they now live in Marina Del Rey.
I was going to say, I haven't known them since they lived in Marina Del Rey.
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of their friends have lost their homes. And if you see Mark Michelson, our Fuzzy and weather guru, he posted on Facebook. I reposted it on my Facebook page. It is... Forget about the loss of houses and lives, as tragic as that is, but the problems fiscally and otherwise going forward just boggle the mind. And the Santa Ana, the winds, the big, strong, dry easterlies have sprung up again today. So we're a little concerned about up north now of LA. Up in last night, they had some problems
Ventura County.
Ventura County, and also we're worried about Orange County. So it ain't over yet, but regardless, some happy news is that Tom and Barb have been living in Marina Del Rey near the California Yacht Club for many, many years. I think I still hold the record for staying in their guest room more than anybody else, as I was passing back and forth to New Zealand back 10 plus years ago. David James is on across the bridge in Sausalito saying 55 to 70 mile per hour winds from the east are not promising, and that is what has sprung up. John Sangmeister's on. He said he had a great chat with Tom this morning. Alan Long wishing Tom, as all of us do, Alistair Murray saying, Alan Long wishing him a happy birthday, but Alistair Murray saying, Tom is one of the best blokes I know. Alistair Murray couldn't have said it better. Alistair, you want to add anything to that about Tom Lewick?
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I could say that I've slept in Tom's bed too, the same as you have.
Not at the same time, though, did we?
No, I don't think it was the same time, not from memory. But yes, I met Tom at boat shows in the 80s. He was obviously instrumental. He started Scuttlebutt, which became a great forum for sailors throughout America and across the world. He's a charming, active gentleman. He was sailing right up into his 80s, and I actually sailed with him. And I had the pleasure a couple of times when I visited Southern California of being a guest of him and Barb. So a real gentleman, and a real icon in the sailing world. A really great guy. Happy birthday, Tom. And
still going strong. I think he said he was going to quit sailing because his joints and so on and so forth when you get a little older. But and I can tell you that at age 71, that's a problem. But he is still, I think, on and off sailing. You see a light air, flat water day, and he might be out there on the back end of a boat, yacht racing, even to this day. Fog Machine, while we're on fires, John Sangmeister, we see you on. Lance Burke here at St. Francis Yacht Club is asking, is there any word on Gladstones? And I have, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I have been telling everybody, Julie, you know this, that Gladstones in Malibu, was it Malibu, Santa Monica, Malibu. That has had a real problem.
Yeah.
This John Sangmeister's restaurant is in Long Beach. That's Gladstone's Long Beach. That restaurant is fine, and he's about to open up Gladstone's in San Diego. Mm-hmm. But John, put in the comments, the chat, if I've got that wrong. But that's my understanding, and I hope that answers your question, Lance Burke. Snowy Cleveland usually means snowy Connecticut in a day or so. Yep, Steve Gruber. And to all of you, and especially to Tom and Barb, happy 94th birthday. Today's his birthday, born in 1931. And as Alistair said, just a terrific, terrific gentleman, my husband and wife, in fact.
Yes.
And a great family, indeed. While we're on Bravo Zulus, let's do the Bravo Zulu for, as I'm sure, or most of you probably know, the Vendée Globe winner has been crowned today on day 65. Charlie Dallon managed to finish and breaks, in fact, not just break, but smash the record. Here he is coming into Les Sables d'Olonne early this morning. And Charlie wins the 2024 Vendée Globe, finishing on today, Tuesday, as was predicted when we were on the air last Friday. After one long, cold final night fighting through the light winds off the Brittany coast, Charlie Dallon, the French skipper of the massive Santé Prévoyance, crossed the Vendée Globe finish line this Tuesday morning at 07:24 UTC to take victory. Dallon has been the most regular and consistent leader of the solo nonstop race around the world. He did back and forth with Richaume, as you all know, most of you will know, heading the fleet for a total of 42 days, including an unbroken run since 30 December. He takes victory in the most prestigious solo race around the world today. So bravo Zulu to him. And here is a nice video. Thank you, Stingray, for forwarding me the link just before we went there. It's better than the video I had. And this from France 24, summing it all up.
We're going to get the very latest from Les Sables d'Olonne Porte with our sports editor, James Vicina. James, what's the very latest? What's happening at the moment?
Well, this is part two of the celebrations, Jeannie. Charlie Dallon is now, as you can see, slowly making his way down through the channel into the port of the Sables d'Olonne. There are thousands of people on either side of the channel here come to celebrate. It's, of course, just after lunchtime. Brilliant moment for everybody to come out, and everybody's so happy to welcome the man who has just spent 2 months out alone at sea and managed to break that record this morning. Why do I say the second part of the celebrations? Because the first was earlier this morning indeed out there when at 25 past 8, Charlie Dalin broke the world record at 64 days as he passed the finishing line out there at sea to set a new standard on the Vendée Globe. A record that he absolutely smashed, and what joy it's been on his face throughout. I mean, right now he's celebrating, breaking flares to the delight of everybody around here in the Sables d'Olonne. Earlier this morning, he got out and sat down, kneeled down and kissed the bow of his boat at the same time. Such was the incredible moment for him as just he managed to finish that journey that he'd been on, going through all of those capes at the south of the in the southern oceans and coming all the way back to the finishing line. An absolutely huge moment for Charlie Dalin, setting a new world record earlier this morning. Celebrations continuing. We're going to hear from him officially later on this afternoon. He's not getting any rest just yet because he'll be telling us all about how things have been, of course, through those 64 days at sea.
Yeah, it'll be great to hear from Charlie Dalin, who actually speaks amazing English, by the way, I learned earlier. I mean, just talk us through, for the viewers especially who might not be familiar with the Vendée Globe. I mean, this is an incredibly difficult race.
It is. It's hugely difficult. It's considered as its nickname is the Everest of the seas. Actually, just to give you an idea of how big it is, the most prestigious moment in sailing. I can actually give you just a little look here of him. He's just coming right past us now. There he is, there in yellow on his boat, just there on the massive boat. Celebrations from the crowds behind, of course. Everybody enjoying him. That's the man who's just broken indeed that world record. How's he broken it? Well, as you can see, perhaps on the side of the boat there, you can see those little wings. Those are the foils, or as we're in France, they like to call them the little moustaches on either side of the boat. That's allowed these boats to taking to another level of almost flying over some of the waves at times. There's been a lot of increase in technology in sailing over the last, let's say, decade or so. But this time, a combination of talent, good weather throughout, and just everything that he's managed to achieve has led to a new record, beaten the last record by 10 days. It's absolutely huge. The second person in the race is expected to reach that, being Richomme. Johan Richomme expected to reach here by tonight. That's the advance that Charlie Dalin has. If we go down, just further down in the rankings, let's go down to perhaps the latest non-Frenchman, being Sam Goodchild, who is fifth right now. He's got 2,800 nautical miles still to cover and expected to arrive in about 7 days' time. That's the advance that Charlie Dalin has. There's going to be plenty more celebrations to come throughout today and the evening.
Certainly are, and thanks so much, James, for keeping an eye on them for us and for all your reporting. I know it's been a long and cold night and day for you, so thanks for that, James Vecina, reporting for us out of Les Sables d'Olonne for the winner
it's
of
quite warm now.
The Vendée Globe. All right, glad to hear it.
Brilliant stuff, and bravo Zulu to him. He had this to say after finishing today: I am the happiest man in the world today, for sure. Winning the Vendée Globe, my second Vendée Globe. Last time, remember, I only had line honors. He was first to finish, but didn't win on corrected time because the time was given to one of the other teams, one of the other skippers who had stopped to help one of the other sailors in distress. This time I did it with the team I have been working for 4 years on this edition, building this new boat, preparing this boat and upgrading the boat, and now it is done. When I crossed the finish line, I felt things I never ever felt before. Maybe still alone, I guess. Definitely the best finishing line crossing of my career. By far, there was so much emotion. I am so really happy to be back in Les Sables d'Olonne after 66, it was actually 65 days, of ultra-fast sailing. I am just really happy. Julie, I can imagine.
As he should be.
He should be, right?
Yes. Incredible.
How about our Zoomers? Anybody care to comment on this amazing achievement?
No, nobody's.
They're all sitting there. Andrew McIrvin, have you ever heard them called mustaches on the tips of wings? You're muted, Andrew. You're still muted, Andrew.
Yeah. They even call them Dalis because of Salvador Dali's sort of very dramatic moustaches.
Oh, that's nice.
I have heard that. No, it's an unbelievable. I mean, just getting round the Vendée Globe. I think calling it the Everest is very unfair because the Everest is, it's a team effort of huge numbers of people usually to get to the top of Everest.
That's true.
These guys, they have a team behind them, but they actually have to sit on the boat for 60, 70, 80, 90 days, let alone the qualifiers, all on their own on those lethal looking boats, which are incredibly uncomfortable, the way they accelerate and decelerate the foiling boats. So I think this is just a superhuman achievement. I think it's incredibly impressive.
Indeed. There's John Emmett, who's getting himself situated. Thank you for that. Andrew, Mr. Dr. Andrew McIrvin in London. Clayton Embleys agrees. He says, great point. Ted Ryman, are you going to come on the Zoom? Ted, there's a link in somebody might ping that to Ted Ryman. He's part of the Super Fozzy crowd. He wants to come on the Zoom. Ted Ryman saying, awesome job by Charlie Delon. J. Frederick Bland, beating the record by 10 days and having the gear hold together is phenomenal.
Absolutely.
Steve Atkins, definitely one of the few French skippers who I could barely understand his grasp of the English language. I think his grasp was pretty darn good. Mark Holland, incredible accomplishment, truly inspiring. And we'll talk some more about it on Friday. And I have already reached out and I'm trying to get him, Julia, on the show.
That'll be great.
Be great to have him on the show, wouldn't it? Okay, John Emmett, if you can mute, please. Keep yourselves muted so that you don't pop the picture over to you. I've got you all in the Zoom. The Zoomers, we've got you on speaker view. So I've got a gallery view of you, but I've got you on speaker view so I can click easily to you here in the control room.
Along with all the other control people.
Along with all the people who have control and authority problems like you and me. Oh, you just have FOMO. You have fear of missing out.
Yeah, I do.
You're still half sick, but you couldn't miss show 800. How are you feeling? You doing okay?
I'm better.
A lot of people have been asking after you. And
Me
how you
too.
doing.
I know.
Oh, you sound a little.
Oh, I'm 100% compared to yesterday.
If I'm sick again on Friday, you all know why.
And
I think I gave it to you.
I was going to say you gave it to me in the first place.
If you're just joining us, welcome to show number 800. It's age. Show numbers like age are just a number. We're not getting too excited about 800 shows. More incredible to, I think, both of us, Julie, is that it's our 9th year of doing this.
Yes.
Since the middle of early part of 2017. And we're here because of the Fozzy, the Super Fozzy, the people who support us, but the people who come on the show regularly, which is what distinguishes these, ladies and gentlemen. These have been the regulars over the years.
Yes.
And that's why they are voting today for our inaugural person of the year. We've already established that the group of the year in our beloved sport of yacht racing are the people who volunteer for yacht clubs, particularly for race management. But today, these ladies and gentlemen are going to vote for the person of the year, the one person, male or female, who we think has had the biggest impact and the most positive impact on the sport in 2024, both for people within the sport and also to and for people outside of the sport. So the final lists on this, I think, all again nominated by the Super Fozzy who are with us. Some, not all of them, but half of them or so are online today with us as Zoomers. And the voting is continuing. Clark Chapin is the scrutineer. And we will find out later in the show who has won the inaugural Person of the Year, Sailing Illustrated's POTY. Pody.
Pody.
Huh?
Oh.
Not to be.
It sounds like too much like potty.
Not potty or pouty. Ted Ryman says he will Zoom one day, but my kid is not fit for purpose. I need a new camera and mic. Julie Ahrens is on. This is one of those times when the word awesome is absolutely appropriate. I think she's referring to Charlie Delon. I think she is right. A little change of order here. I thought I'd turn that music down on the slide. I thought we'd do this day in history a little earlier. Get it out of the way before we get to the POTY. What happened, Julia, or any of the Zoomers, what happened on this day in 2024, a year ago today? Any idea, Julia?
No, not offhand.
Any idea from the Zoomers? I don't see anybody on the Zoom. Here's your first clue. Courtesy of Dean Lewins of the DPA, the Danish Photo Association. I think it's Press Association, actually. I'm waiting for a hand to go up among the Zoomers. Or Julia, any idea? A year ago today. Here's your second clue. That's a Danish team in the Far 40 Worlds in Sydney in 2005. For extra credit, who was the jury chairman at that event? Yes, it was I.
Yeah.
Gordon Smith. Gordon Smith gets it. He gets it. Frederick became king. Now, you would think a guy living in Denmark would know that, right?
Yes.
Gordon Smith, I'm going to play the rest of these slides and then ask you to opine on this magnificent date in history. This is Greg Wood's photo. This is also, Alistair, down your way. Peter Stevenson, even more close to home to you in Sydney. This is His Now Majesty. He was Crown Prince then, sailing in a Taser. I don't know what the event was there in Sydney in 2009. And he's also been sailing Dragons. And this was in 2010, the Danish team Dragon Cup, a Danish team sailing in the Dragon Cup in Marstrand in Sweden. And Karen Robertson, she's saying, he's still king of Greenland, too.
I can fill you in on that Taser shot, Tom.
Say again?
I can fill you in on that Taser shot.
I'll come back to you all in a moment. Let me get through the rest of the slides for everyone's edification, and then we'll have you fill us in. There he is with his mother. The late, she's still not the late. She's the former queen. She stepped down a year ago today.
She's always been lovely.
And she's a very bright lady by all accounts. I've not met her, but the famous Danish sailor with his mother. And that's at the Brandenburg Gate in, 2021, I guess it is.
Mm-hmm.
And there he is down under again. This is in Sydney. Alistair, you recognize that boat? Or Peter Stevenson, you recognize that yacht?
Mm-hmm.
Wild Oats 11 in the Solus, and that one of the pre-Sydney Hobart races on your beautiful Sydney Harbor in 2021. And there was a year ago today in your country, your adopted country, Gordon Smith of Denmark, out on the balcony when the Queen stepped down, handed the scepter to her son, and he became the sailing Crown Prince, became king on this day a year ago. The Queen steps down, long live the king. On 14 January, Queen Margaret II of Denmark hands over the scepter to her eldest son, who from now on will perform his royal duties as Frederick X. The 55-year-old Crown Prince has been waiting his whole life for this day. The bustling heir to the throne has also used the time for regatta sailing, and he's a great sailor. I know him fairly well. And bravo Zulu that we now have another sailing king, Julia.
It's about time.
Yes, indeed. So Gordon, can you fill us in on your sailing king there in Denmark?
Yeah, there was quite a lot of pack into your pictures, actually, one way or another. If you were to go back to the tasers, your taser picture in Sydney, of course, in the background, you have the Sydney Opera House, which was designed by Johan Utzon, a famous architect. And I knew and did a little bit of preliminary work on a project with his son, Kim, whose dog is named the same as my son, Oscar, both spelt with a K. But there's also, should we say, the Dragon World Cup, which sailed up in Skane. And I actually met the Crown Prince then and interviewed him and had lunch with him. And he's absolutely charming bloke. And the population is absolutely behind him. He's just given his first New Year's speech, and people appreciate it enormously. And his mother has the very lovely nickname of Daisy. And that's because Margarita actually means the flower daisy. But she is indeed a very talented lady and very wedded to the sea, and enjoyed taking her summer cruise on the Royal Yacht. And she not only designed all the fabrics for the Royal Yacht, but was a long-standing and much rewarded and awarded designer of the Danish Royal Ballet's costumes.
His mother, the Queen?
Yes, Daisy. She's also a designer and artist in her paintings, and is indeed an extremely talented artist, and worked with the Royal Ballet, the Royal Theatre, and in designing costumes, and is recognised as being extremely good at it, and you can see that she is.
Wow, great,
So
great
you're
stuff.
right; they're very close. I'm so sorry.
Great stuff. Thank you for that. Any of the other Zoomers have a comment on His Majesty King Frederick the 10th?
Yes, I do.
Please.
A couple of quick stories. That photograph of him in the Tazars was taken during the World Masters Games in Sydney. I can't remember the year, but I competed in it against Prince Frederick. And my memory of him was that I beat him easily and that he spent a great deal of his time upside down in Sydney Harbour.
Poor thing.
He failed to master the art of sailing them. But he and I met him, and met him, spent some time with him. He was a great guy. He was coached by the great Victor Kovalenko in that regatta to try to get him up to speed in a very short time in a new class for him. And my other story about Frederick is that in my Ronstand days, we made two acquisitions in Denmark. One was Fredrickson Yacht Fittings, and the other was Anderson Winches. And when we purchased Fredrickson, I actually travelled to Denmark, and my visit coincided with the royal wedding. And I couldn't believe how excited Denmark was about it, how flavour of the month Australia was. You go to the airport and every check-in desk had an Australian flag next to a Danish flag. It was really fabulous. And I was there during the wedding with two of my colleagues, and we chose to take advantage of that situation. And everywhere we went, we told people that we met that we were Mary's brothers, and that we were there for the...
Alistair, explain who Mary is, because not everybody will know that she's an Aussie.
Well, Princess Mary, who is now Queen Mary, is from Tasmania, and she happened to be, during the 2000 Olympics, was travelling with her girlfriend in Sydney, and was in a pub in Sydney, and met the then Prince Frederick, who subsequently became her husband. And she's very popular in Australia, and I believe very popular in Denmark. And we convinced everybody we were her brothers, and we were there for the wedding. And I can tell you, everywhere we went, we got free meals, free drinks. We were treated magnificently.
I hope you sent her a thank you note.
Hey, I wonder if Peter Stevenson can shed any light on the Queen. Peter, do you know her? Have you had any experiences with her?
Look, we're personal friends, but and also being the big freeloader that I am, I always like to get in on the act. But one story with what Alistair mentioned about Frederick spending upside down on Sydney Harbour. There was one day there, because I was racing, I think it was 2009 with the Laser World Masters. Not the Laser World Masters, it was the World Masters Games. And we had such a violent storm come through at one stage there. About 80 lasers, or maybe 60, sought refuge in Watson's Bay, and we're all sitting on the rocks holding the ends of our masts as this storm came through. So it was, for me, a memorable experience, but just a lot of fun out of Wallara Sailing Club, and out around the harbour with people from all over the world. So and that's the great thing about the sport that we do, is you get to meet people all around the world. And especially when you go to Metz and sat in a bar there with Alistair and he buys you a drink.
The Marine Equipment Trade Show also, well, that's in that's.
And you've also got to make sure you got a spare bottle of Pablo and Pedro wine on board, just in case.
Okay. I remember all of you who are all of you Zoomers, particularly you Aussies. I remember that when I was down there for the Far 40 Worlds in Sydney. What was that, Alistair? What year do you remember, or Peter? Whatever it was, 2000 something. And I did have the pleasure of chairing the jury for a number of years in that class at various events around the world. And when the two of them arrived at, I guess we were at the CYCA, I can't remember, I think it was. When the two of them would arrive, and there was stanchions and ropes and so on to keep the hoi polloi away as they could get into the yacht club without being harassed by the paparazzi. She, tell me if I'm wrong, Peter and Alistair, she appeared to be way more popular than he did. They all wanted to see her, all the Aussies.
Well, they were both very popular in Australia, and during the World Masters Games, I was introduced to Mary and Frederick by Victor Kovalenko, actually, and people were joking about how we were talking one day about how I like to hang out with royalty, and somebody produced the daily newspaper. It was the Sydney Morning Herald, and it was actually a photograph of Prince Frederick with me talking to him on the front page of the paper, and I got quite a bit of grief for that.
Well, what a small world it is, because Gordon Smith, I think the year I met you was a Far 40 Worlds at the Royal
Indeed.
Danish Yacht Club, and you were there with your young then son, and the Crown Prince
Indeed.
was sailing there, and he was very, very nice, very, all a part of the whole, just a regular guy at the regatta, if I recall correctly.
Absolutely, and when we were particularly up in Skane for the Dragon World Cup, I mean, it was he'd sit down and it in his sailing, in the sailing world, you just talk to him as Frederick, address him as Frederick. I'd also know that when they got engaged, Mary and Frederick got engaged, they held the match racing. Held a match race in the centre of the harbour of Copenhagen, and that was massively attended, and it really raised the profile for the sport. And they just endeared themselves to the country, and they are also, as you said, to call it the popular touch is unfortunate. I think you get the personal, and it is very personal.
Indeed.
Way of talking to people, which is very charming.
Yeah, did I say Gordon's then son? I meant Gordon's then young son. That must have been the better part of 20 years ago, too, wasn't it, Gordon? Yeah, there's Håkan Håkansson. Paparazzi are a consistent problem in sailing. Maybe King Frederick ought to be our person of the year for all he's done to help promote the sport, at least in Scandinavia. Alan Long says it's Fozies like this that have gotten us to number 800. I think that is true. Wonderful story. Stingray is saying, can we please take Australia after we take Denmark? Oh, we do Greenland first, Stingray. But that's the story. That's what happened this day in history. A year ago today, the sailing crown prince becomes king. So bravo to him. And maybe I'll see. Do you think, Gordon, he'd come on the show? If I pinged his ADC and said, hey, here's who we are, and we'd love to have His Majesty on the show for just to talk about sailing and his sailing. His dad was French. His dad was a sailor, and the king, I don't know if he has time for doing much sailing now, but Constantine sailed even after he was king of Greece, and of course he won a gold medal, and he's just passed away. And King Harold of Norway still sails. King Juan Carlos of Spain still sails, so we've got a lot of sailing kings. Do you think he would do that, Gordon? Would you put in the request?
I think he would. I have his ADC's card. I think certainly in a sailing event, somebody would be able to get 5 minutes out of him, because he is very approachable.
Yeah, he is indeed. I remember from that. Well, several of those were guys. Who else in the gang had something to say, and we'll wrap this up.
Well, Tom, in my normal disruptive way, on your behalf, I'm quite happy to reach out to him and establish contact. I'm not quite sure how I'll do it, but being the disruptor that I am, I'll have a go.
Well, knowing you'll call up Mary. You'll call up Queen Mary, and then we'll really have problems.
I'll speak to the family in Tasmania.
Okay. So that's what happened on this day in history. Back a year ago today, they're up there on the balcony. This day in history, the 14th of January, 2024. Again, we're about 34 minutes into today's show. Julia's here. She's not 100%, but her FOMO got her down here to Studio B.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't miss this. We decided to dress nothing out of, kind of our normal attire. Your fancy dress and scarf in red, and I'm in a green sports coat. Port and starboard, Julia.
Yes.
Port and starboard for today for this auspicious occasion. We are the Super Fozy who are on the Zoom, and then some are voting, and they will be voting live during the show, and Clark will explain to you all how that's going to work here in a few minutes. And we will know soon, before the end of this show, who is the inaugural Person of the Year. And I just also want to say, Julia, as you know, this is the yacht racing Person of the Year. And John Emmett and I had a discussion this morning at Dark 30, whether it's sailing or yacht racing. And you need to move to your left. I center the other guy. There you go. I have to center you up. Watch on your monitor, just like the guys in the Zoom.
Yes,
there you
thank
go. You say yes, dear.
Yes, dear.
That's more like it. Keep being Julia centered. Do you notice how she leans to the right, Gordon Smith? I accuse you of leaning to the left, but Julia leans to the right.
That's just built in. I know.
You say Trump, and Julia goes like that. Okay, that's just a joke, Clark. But what was I talking about?
Left and right.
Left and right. But I want to ask Thierry de Jong, because I see him on, and he's talking about his Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands, who was a sailor. Her mom, Queen Juliana, came to see us sailing in the Varian World Championship in Orbitello. Thierry's down in SoCal. I hope you're safe down there, Thierry. I know you are. But this argument or discussion, really an argument I've had with John Emmett, who wants this to be the sailing person of the year. And I said, no, John, we want this to be the yacht racing person of the year. And then John went into a long litany about, well, is a moth a yacht? Is a kite foiler, is that a yacht? And I said, yes, where's Thierry de Jong when we need him? Where is John Lammerts van Buren when we need him? Thierry confirmed for me that the Dutch word yacht means small pleasure craft, and particularly applying to sailing, but not necessarily. But we've been using that word for a long time. Thierry's not in the Zoom. I'll ask the Zoomers if anyone wants to opine on that topic. I'm going to pick on somebody. I'm going to ask Hamish Ross to opine. He, the yachting historian that he is, classic yachtsman that he is, and ask Hamish if he wants to opine on the word yacht as applying to our beloved sport.
Well, I think we all know a yacht when we see one.
Is that like porn? We know porn when we see one? See it?
Yes, exactly. You'd be more expert at that, Tom, than I would be.
Well, I wouldn't. That was our Supreme Court, remember, Hamish? There was somebody on our... You remember who that was, Julia? One of the gentlemen on our Supreme Court some years ago said, I can't define porn, but I know it when I see it. Hamish!
Well, I struggle with a kiteboard being a yacht, but, moths and other foiling craft, if you like, fall into my personal definition of a yacht. If you don't allow that, then you kind of kick out all the current America's Cup craft as well, don't you? I know what part of the sport I prefer, but it doesn't take away from the fact that they are, I think, by most people's definition, yachts.
Okay, well, Thierry de Jong is starting to favor John Emmett's approach. He's saying the word yacht is mainly larger sailboat, not a dinghy. John Emmett, do you want to defend your position?
Yeah, I mean, you can argue whether it's a medium boat or a large boat or boat capable of a sustained voyage, but at the end of the day, it's a boat, and there's lots of things that sail that aren't a boat, but are definitely sailing. And, I just reeled off a couple of examples with, which are part of the Olympic sailing scene and a lot more. As a sport, we need to be inclusive, not just narrow it down to people who have lots of money and sail big boats with lump of leads on the bottom.
Well, I just go back to the yacht racing rules, and before they became the racing rules of sailing. Clark Chapin, do you want to comment on this? Maybe you can referee this as well as you're refereeing the voting today.
My opinion's kind of more along John's line. I think quite frankly, I think changing the title from the yacht racing rules to racing rules of sailing was a good move.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anybody else? I got Graham Sweeney.
That might not be the answer you wanted.
No,
but that's my
we
answer.
want opinions. We want frank opinions from cool people, and we're going to get one now. Thank you, Clark. We're going to get one from Graham Sweeney up in Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Tom. I think you shouldn't really narrow it down to a vessel. I think you should narrow it down more to what people do. We are in a state at the moment where we've got so many different types of vessels out there sailing that we really need to redefine what we're looking at. I mean, we've had this argument over and over again, right from the beginning of the year, last year, right the way through. I mean, there are yachts. If you looked at the original yacht, the Dutch yacht, it was more than a dinghy. It was quite a hefty vessel. So I wouldn't even regard that as a dinghy, and I wouldn't regard it as a yacht. So well, it's a bit of a mess. I think the guys in Oz might say something totally different than what I'm saying here in England. But I think we should really look at what we do when we go sailing. We sit on the thing, or we sit in the thing, and we pull the relevant ropes, and we have a good time. And that kind of is a basic way of being a sailor. I mean, whether you get it right is another thing, but we really do need to start thinking about it, that it's us in the sport rather than the vessel we sail on.
Well, I think we all agree with that. We all agree with John Emmett that we need to be inclusive. Alan Long is saying, or no, it wasn't Alan Long. Let's see who it was. Steve Gruber saying, I looked up dinghy. It's from a Hindi word for rowboat. But I think we all know what we mean. We mean a sailing vessel, whether it's large or small, and the people that are here that have been nominated as Person of the Year for Sailing. I mean, we're called Sailing Illustrated, not Yacht Racing Illustrated. We made a conscious decision at the time, 9 years ago, and we founded this. But we're talking about racing sailboats, racing yachts. Sail racing is what some in Europe call it, and maybe that's okay too. But regardless, when the voting is happening today, it is for the person who, via sail racing, yacht racing, sailboat racing, has contributed, we think, the panel, the group thinks, contributed the most positively. I mean, we're not talking about Stalin or Hitler in the Time Magazine Person of the Year sense, when sometimes they've had somebody like that as Person of the Year who was clearly not a positive person. But I think all these 6 people have done amazingly good things for the sport, not only this year, but in the past, both on the water and off. And we'll see who is elected SI's inaugural Person of the Year, voted.
But including
later
this year.
in the show.
Yeah.
Say again?
And including this year.
Well, especially this year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's especially this year. Karen Robertson, I liked Hawkinson's. He said, should a cycler be eligible? They aren't really sailing at all. Well, let's don't get into that quite. But the idea, Hawkins was saying that any yachting rules cover anything from remote control and up. That's my thinking. But I see the points of others who are saying it's a little... the word yacht is a little pretentious, is a little uppity sometimes. You know, here in the States especially, you think of someone with a yacht, and it's a gin palace.
Yes.
Worth a lot of money, and with cocktails and waiters and waitresses and so on and so forth. We're obviously not talking about... I grew up sailing a Sunfish, as Clark Chapin knows, in my early days, and I always thought that was a yacht covered by the yacht racing rules, and it was at the time.
At the time.
Julia?
Sir.
Shall we move on?
Yes.
What are we celebrating today? And I've added some music. Do you like the music?
Yes.
We are celebrating our 800th show. And we don't need to say any more than that, but Julie and I are just happy we're both alive.
Right.
after all, our 9th year. And to do this show with all, and it's not for all of you, it's with all of you. Several of you have commented.
Yes.
We do it with the FOSI, and the FOSI make the show. And I mean the Friends of Sailing Illustrated, who watch, who comment, who come on the show. And we appreciate very much all of you, especially those who give us a few bucks a month to keep us on the air in terms of our fees for streaming and Zooming. And the Zoom bill came today.
Uh-oh.
So I had a good, it auto pays, so it's a good thing, or else we wouldn't have the gang. We wouldn't have the gang on today.
Uh-oh.
Thank you all,
Yeah.
and thanks for sticking with us through 800. And I doubt we'll do another 800. We probably won't live that long, but we'll give it a whirl anyway. Thanks for your support, and if you want to support us directly, patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated. Thanks, Alan Long. Thanks, Chris Fury. Thanks all the rest of you for your kind comments. On Friday's show, program note before we move ahead here, I have some very disturbing news. And Clark, even since you and I talked last night, I have some more news. U.S. Sailing is in a world of hurt. They've got very serious financial problems. And I'm learning more by the hour almost, certainly by the day. And we will discuss this at some length on Friday, a real expose, because sadly, this gives me no pleasure, but U.S. Sailing is seriously in the red and are in serious strife. And whether they even continue as an organization is, shall we say, not certain. We'll discuss that on Friday. We'll do a preview for Sail GP, which of course is happening Friday evening, our time, Saturday down under, and Sunday this coming weekend, our Friday and Saturday. and we'll discuss U.S. sailing. And I'm very pleased to say, Julie, that a week from today, we'll have Dawn Riley on.
Oh, good.
She's agreed to come on and talk about some very new, innovative, and I think valuable program service that Oak Cliff and Dawn are providing to our beloved sport, at least in this country. Okay, I'm going to go back to the Zoomers and see if anybody has any questions or comments. Let me know. Hand up if you want to talk on any of the foregoing. Seeing, Gordon Smith wants to talk again. Gordon? Go ahead.
Well, I was thinking about your 800th show, and I was thinking some of the events that I've enjoyed learning more about and experience in a way that I couldn't do without Sailing Illustrated. And I think that's a really important part. And also to be able to come engage with people and meet people, in the case of John and Lily, and that was a delight with my family. And it just brought me the most immense pleasure, and also informed me and taught me and made me think about new perspectives. And was my point of view correct? Should I look at things in a new way? So I think it's been very valuable part of my understanding of the sport that I like so much. So I'd like to say thank you very much.
Well, thank you for that. And thanks to all of you, and thumbs up there on the panel. And I'm just looking at the panelists in the upper left, Clark Chapin, who I've known since we were kids at our home yacht club in Michigan. I've known Rick for the better part, I guess, Rick, of 40 years when you were with Rolex back in the day. And I was chairman of the Rolex Yachtswoman. I don't know if we had both. We just had Yachtsman of the Year. By the way, Cole Brower has been nominated for the U.S. Yachts Woman of the Year. And that I'm a voting member of that. I did have cast my vote, and that will be announced sometime, Clark, when down at the Sailing Leadership Forum down in Coronado, I think, in a few weeks. But just going back to the gang, I've known Alistair for the better part. I guess, Alistair, we go back to about 1980, right? So 45 years. That's hard to believe. And Magnus, I don't know when we first met, and I'm trying to think if we've ever actually met in person. I think I know you like a brother, but have we ever actually met, broken bread, had a glass of wine?
Yeah, 2002. 2002 at the America's Cup.
At the Cup. Good. And Gordon and I have met a couple times, particularly at the Royal Danish. Graham, have we ever met? I don't think we have, but I feel again like you're a brother.
You might have forgotten me. No, we haven't met yet. Let's put it that way.
And Hamish, I used to say to Hamish, "I'll see you in court." And we did. We were on opposite sides of teams back in what, 2000 was it, Hamish, when we first met? So it goes way back. When did we first meet, Hamish?
1999. It was during the Louis Vuitton series in Auckland. I was sent by John Marshall to represent young America at the time.
At a protest hearing or a...
Yeah, it was something, well, maybe a request for redress, I think, for something that happened on the race committee.
Shall I tell the story?
He was a suave guy that seemed to know everybody who was chatting and organising everything. And I went back to John Marshall. I went back to John Marshall and I said, "Who is this gentleman, Tom Eamon?" And he said, "He ain't no gentleman."
Well, I was the spear carrier for my team, and you were the spear carrier for the New York Yacht Club. Hamish showed up from his law firm, Bell Gully, and it's a big law firm downtown Auckland. And he came in. First day, he came in his suit, and he had a tie on. I think maybe he'd taken the tie off. I don't remember Hamish, but wingtips. He looked marvelous, and the rest was our crappy sailing clothes, maybe our follies. I don't remember. The next day, Hamish he had a team jacket on over his suit, maybe had taken his tie off, and by the end of the week, we had him down. We had him down to sailing clothes. It turns out he was quite a good sailor. We didn't know it, by the way. Is that all true, Hamish?
Yeah, it's true, but I got to say, I won most of the hearings.
What, in then or since?
Then.
Oh, my goodness. And Mr. Dr. Andrew McIrvin, who we've gotten to know over the last, particularly at the Stag Cruise. He's been over here to the Stag Cruise as our guest. But I think, Andrew, when you came on the show at the start of the pandemic and filled us all in on COVID, you provided a huge service for not only all of us, but all of our viewers, because you had the facts before
Absolutely.
just about anybody else. Andrew.
Well, yeah, I think it was a slightly odd that I was torn out of my normal surgical specialty and had to become a very rapid expert on public health and viruses around the world. Hopefully, I help people get back to sailing in a sensible way as fast as we possibly could, because boy, there was a lot of rubbish being talked, and I'm afraid still. And the world got itself in a terrible mess. Whether we'll do it better next time, I'm pretty doubtful. Actually, it's depressing. We've put the most unbelievably, ludicrously expensive inquiry, which is not even halfway through, and it's going to cost millions and millions and millions of pounds. And as far as I can see, they're asking none of the right questions. The Danes got it right. Swedes. So mustn't get these Scandinavians mixed up. The Swedes put together an inquiry within about 3 months of the end of the pandemic. They dealt with the pandemic probably better than anywhere else in the world. They came out with very sensible conclusions, and they were just so much a world leader in that. There's so much infighting still going on. You can see it's all polarized in the US with the pro-Fauci, anti-Fauci. It became politicized, which of course is a disaster. How you get to the truth. But yeah, well, I hope my small contribution in getting people going sailing safely after the pandemic was I think one of the slightly more useful things I might have done in medicine.
Well, you certainly one of the best things we've had in this show is the information you gave us early on. I mean,
Absolutely.
when California was pulling kids off beaches and they were out surfing by themselves, and meanwhile our governor was going to dinner at the French Laundry. We won't politicize that.
No.
But you said, hey, go sailing, get out and get some exercise, get some fresh air. Just don't go below and sleep all night with people, because you might pass it on back and forth. So that was good advice. Thank you. John Emmett, I'm going to do your report, but again, somebody who I feel like is a brother of a different mother by now. We talk not quite daily, but regularly, and of course he contributes to this show beautifully. And I'm going to play his contribution for today's show in a moment. John, anything you want to add before we play your video?
Just thinking, I probably didn't have any grey hair. That's why I started watching Sailing Illustrated, because I don't know where this has come from. It's like a tide line gradually creeping up.
Well, you didn't have a beard either, so if you had a gray hair, you couldn't see it.
Yeah.
Okay, Andrew.
I warn you. No, I warn you, John. I had a beard until suddenly my beard had gone white long before the rest of my hair. And my wife pointed out when I shaved it off that I looked an awful lot younger. I don't think Lily's going to let you keep that for very long.
I agree.
Yeah, Julia makes me shave before every show, so that's what that is all about. Let's go on to John's report. As usual, we have a report from John. We call the Coaching Corner because he's a fabulous coach, Olympic coach, coached his now wife to an Olympic gold medal, among others, to great success in the ILCA and the laser class, but also in others. John Emmett's Coaching Corner today.
Hi, Tom, Julia, and all the Fozy. Welcome to Sailing Illustrated and John Emmett's Coaching Corner. Lovely day here in Weymouth. Bit chilly, but January and February are the coldest months in the UK, and then after that the temperature is only going to increase. So it's the start of the year, and I'm going to continue thinking about those New Year's resolutions. Mine, pretty straightforward, inclusivity of sailing. But what does that mean? Well, I think it's about making the box to capture sailors as big as possible, to be as inclusive as possible. And that means every aspect of sailing. There'll be people who possibly can't actively sail as much as they would like, who contribute a huge amount to the sport. Remember, those people behind the scenes who organise the events, without them, the events aren't possible at all. So, I mean, who contributes the most to sailing? When we go racing, by definition, we need the people at the back of the fleet. Otherwise, if it's only ever the people who race to win the championship, I guess our championships would only have, 10 places. And certainly that demographic would get smaller and smaller. We saw, a little while ago, the domination of the youth at the Moth World. So it's really important to be as inclusive as possible. And there really is a boat out there for absolutely everyone. So yeah, we need to encourage as many people, and it's not just the sailors, for coaches, race officials. By having a broad church, a broad spectrum, then it's better. I like to see, more female race officers, more female coaches, more young race officials, so that we get that balance of opinion, that balance of views, and just, to look at the future health of the sport. And that's why, I encourage people just to achieve, because that will increase the chance of you achieving it. So what can you do? Well, I think people always do well at things they enjoy. So if there's a particular aspect of the sport you enjoy, because it's very different, slow boat match racing, foiling, offshore racing, Olympic circuit, but put your time into what you enjoy most. And if we all do our little bit, then it makes the sport better as a whole. If you haven't done so already, like, share, comments, always very welcome, maybe especially in replay when you've had a chance to think. See you on the show.
John Emmett's Coaching Corner. Get to the front of the fleet with John, and he's on with our group of Super Fozy today, who are about to vote for our Person of the Year. And I now see that, there's some others on here, but I see John Lamberts Van Buren. We were going to ask him as a Dutchman if he wanted to comment on the word yacht, but maybe it's been put to bed by Håkan Håkansson replying. He says it sort of depends on, no, that was a reply to him, who said that he had an Opti with a waitress on it, and that made the Opti a yacht because he had a waitress. Yeah, okay. We also have a report. We have regular reportage, in fact, from Alistair Murray, who's on with the Super Fozy today, and Alistair contributes Alistair's awesome Aussie anecdote from time to time, in fact, regularly of late, and we have one from him today. We appreciate it very much. And we always kick it off with the nice Royal Naval Band of Australia's rendition of Waltzing Matilda. Here's Alistair's awesome Aussie anecdote, a short one, about the Etchells Worlds.
G'day, Tom, Julia, and all the Fozy. I just thought I'd drop you a really quick AAAA right now, because I've just watched the last race of the Etchells Worlds. There'll be plenty of coverage of this series, so I'm not going to try to give it to you in detail, but I've just witnessed a fantastic match race between the Australian boat Magpie with Graham Taylor, Ben Lamb and James Mayo on board, racing against the American boat Dangerous with John Dane, Eric Doyle and Bill Hardesty. They went into the final race after 8 races, tied on 22 points, so it became an absolute match race. But GT's worst was much better than John Dane's worst, so it was to GT's advantage to sail John Dane off the course. They had a fantastic match racing tussle before the start, and then GT did exactly that, sailed him right off the course on the first work, and they were in last and second last places, which is exactly what GT needed. Anyway, it was fantastic match racing. Red flags flying by both boats. You'll probably go to the room, but it's actually irrelevant because it'll be the discards for both of them, which leaves GT the clear winner, John Dane in second, and I think JC Strong in third, but we'll see how that one pans out because the final results haven't been finalised. Anyway, it was particularly exciting. I was really privileged to watch it. I'm also the Master of Ceremony tonight at the presentation dinner, which I'm looking forward to. So I won't be taking any footage for Sailing Illustrated. I'll just mix with the sailors, do my job, get a few stories, maybe a few photos with them. It'll be just terrific because the Etchells is a great class. I've got plenty of friends in it, and it's going to be a great way to wrap up the series. A very successful series here in Melbourne, run out of Royal Brighton Yacht Club on Port Phillip. The weather, Melbourne's weather was typical. It threw everything at all the sailors. But you know what always happens? The best sailors always come out on top. GT and his crew were the defending champions, and they've defended it successfully. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to our call tomorrow morning Australian time to determine the Sailing Illustrated Person of the Year. Cheers, folks. Bye.
Alistair's awesome Aussie anecdote for today. I really appreciate his. Julia, use your cough switch if you're going to cough. You'll have to get Mr. Dr. Andrew McIrvin on your case again.
Oh.
A lot of nice comments about Mr. Doctor. Hamish Ross said,
Indeed.
We got more from Andrew than we ever got from our government in terms of advice. Gordon Smith saying, yeah, Andrew McIrvin was indeed a wonderful port of call during COVID. Alan Long agreeing.
Yep.
Alex Kent, free speech and debate helps to get to the truth. And of course, thank you, Alex. That's what we like to do on here. We respect everybody's opinions. We try to stay non-political. We every now and then wander into some politics, but that's the nature of the beast when you get a bunch of very smart and opinionated people on here, which we love. And we love everybody's right to opine, whether it's on yachting or whether it's on something nice like Alistair just talked about, the event there in Melbourne, or what we're talking about today, which is our Person of the Year. One more Bravo Zulu before we get to that. I thought it was appropriate for us to give a good shout out to the winners of the first ever Macau Match Cup. And again, Ian Williams is on a roll. He lost only one match in this event. You know, he won the Worlds last month in China, and they're back in China now in Macau. And Ian and his crew of Richard Sydenham, John Gunderson, and Jerry Mitchell have done it again in style.
Wow.
It was a massively good performance. And of course, they're supported by Pindar.
Whoever that is.
Pindar, another one of our Fozy. Pindar by Manusport Logistics, and also another Fozy, Gladstones of Long Beach, soon to be San Diego. John Sangmeister, Andrew Pindar, thank you for the support you continue to give to our beloved sport. And talking about Fozy, here's John Emmett's wife, Lily, Golden Lily Zhu, who was the television commentator par excellence for this event, and also doing the post-day, the dailies, the post-race videos each day. And here is the final one from day 5.
It is the final day of the 2025 Macau Match Cup, the opening event of World Match Racing Tour this year. The winner of the event will leave with $30,000 prize money. The day opens with match 3 in both semi-finals, with New Zealand Nick Agnock-Johnson leading 2-0 over the USA's Gavin Brady. And similarly, in the other contest, Britain's Ian Williams has a 2-point lead over the USA's Chris Paul. Straight into Flight 3 of the semi-finals, and the Kiwis are almost perfect around the track. And despite Brady and his crew's best efforts, they can't live with the Kiwis, who secure a 3-0 win to reach the final.
Match racing is about winning one race at a time, so props to Gavin and his team. Even though the results don't show it, they've sailed an amazing semi-finals, and it actually has been quite tight.
It was a repeat in the Williams versus Pro in the third match. Ian takes the right off the start line, and the only view for Chris and his team is the British transom on their yacht. As Ian steers the team home with a 100-meter lead across the finish line to continue his 100% unbeaten record in this event so far, having won all 17 matches raced.
Really pleased to have got through the semi-finals against Chris Paul, and looking forward to a good final.
So, it's Ian Williams, who is the 8-time and current World Match Racing champion, against the 2022 World Tour champion Nick Agnock-Johnson in the Macau Match Cup final. In this first final, Ian wins with some ease, crossing the line with a 100-meter lead after a solid race. But in match 2, the pre-start sees a collision between the pair as they try to outmaneuver each other with a minute to go. William is penalized and trails the Kiwis. Then, on the final run to the finish, he tries to trap Nick downwind, but on this occasion, Nick is wise to it and manages to shake free and even the score at 1 win each. Match 3, and there's plenty of action in the pre-start, but both sail clear. However, Ian reads the wing ships perfectly to carve out a narrow lead by the final mark of the course. There's less than a boat length lead, and Nick can sense an opportunity to overtake from behind here, but suffers from a slow spinnaker hoist and can't quite close the gap enough downwind, allowing Williams to take a 2-1 advantage in this first 2-3 win contest. Match 4 is all or nothing for the Kiwis now, as they can't afford a mistake. In the pre-start, EJ appears to be in control, but Ian fakes to round the committee boat, then ducks out as EJ goes below. As they come together, there are protests, but umpires hoist a green flag, no penalty. At the start, EJ forces Ian to tack right onto the committee boat as the seconds tick by. So it's a slow start for the Brits as the Kiwis are clear way upwind. On this first beat, Williams gets a lift on the right side of the course and is pointing higher. He goes all the way to the ley line on the approach to the first mark. It's tight and EJ comes in hot, but Ian is there and rounds, less than a boat length between them. Nick protests, but the umpire waves it away. Further down the track, Williams is controlling this now, as EJ can't jibe due to the overlap. But then tries, and there's contact. Surprisingly, no penalty. On this second beat, Williams stays on the right side of the track and puts a loose cover on EJ, but the Kiwis are gradually gaining on each tack. Now, Ian sails his opposition all the way to port ley line and finally tacks, leaving EJ around 5 boat lengths behind, which could just be the defining move in this final. He runs the mark with a jibe set, and the British team are clear away. There's no coming back for EJ and his team. Downwind, they cannot close the gap, quickly falling over 120 meters behind. Ian Williams and his team crossed the line to claim back-to-back wins on the World Tour, winning the first ever Macau Match Cup. Ian Williams' World Match Racing Tour success continues, finishing the event with 20 wins and only 1 loss, a remarkable achievement. With the competition complete, all that's left is the awards ceremony held at MGM Macau, where competitors are honored. Third place goes to Chris Paul, and it's another prodding for Nick Agnock-Johnson, while Ian Williams and his team are presented with the first ever Macau Match Cup trophy in this glittering ceremony.
Yeah, and I see that Andrew Dolly Devola down in Australia is saying that Lily is racing in our VX1 championship starting tomorrow on Pittwater in Sydney. John Emmett, did you know that your wife is sailing?
Yeah, she just messaged me about having a date, and I said, sorry, I'm live on Sailing Illustrated. So,
yes.
You know, I was thinking of asking Clark, but it's a big ask to go back and see how many AAAAs and how many coaching corners Alistair and John respectively have done, but I'll bet you it's in the hundreds, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot. And John, we really appreciate your doing it. What's the hardest part about doing them?
Not being bitten by dogs or or whatever. Because it's quite easy when you're walking along and talking, you know, you don't notice the background. So somebody could run up to me and pull my trousers down without me noticing. I think probably 1 in 10 you'll see somebody doing star jumps or something in the background, because there's not that many places I can walk within half an hour of my home. So
John, we'd pay good money. We double
you have paid good money.
We double your salary if we saw somebody come along pull your pants down on your report. Look at all these guys.
Oh,
tell me, Magnus the Magnificent, he writes this fabulous blog called Rule 69, and it's on Substack. Magnus, tell us, Wouldn't we pay good money to see John Emmett's pants down around his ankles on one of his reports?
I will finance that. Not a problem.
Do you
It's a
guys
done
know?
deal, Tom.
Do you guys
Tell
know
me
each
where to
other?
send it.
You're living in Cowes. John's living in Weymouth and on the family farm just north of Cowes. Do you two know each other?
We talk quite regularly at the moment.
Oh, good.
Is that good or bad?
It's good, very good. Because
What do you-
obviously, I'm kind of trying to kickstart world sailing into, giving the resources to the Paralympic bid and actually getting a coherent bid to get Paralympic sailing, back into the sailing back into the Paralympic Games. And we've got a little group going, and John is a very key part of that. And we're making progress, and there's some really, really big names who are behind us. And we just need to keep pushing. And it's kind of crazy. We have a governing body that is pretty poor, to be honest, and mired in politics. And I think they need a kick.
What can we do to help? And then I'll go to
We've
John.
just got to keep the pressure on. And I think it's a very simple thing. It is highlighting a lack of resource, budget cuts, just a whole lack of momentum and a real sort of politics problem within world sailing. And there's half the people on this super FOSI who I speak to regularly who would agree with me, who say, who have anecdotes from going years back. So it's a bit of an inherent problem, but it was a very good point made to me that almost every Olympic sport has that is currently on the Olympic roster has a sport in the Paralympics as well. So it may well be that Olympic sailing, by not being in the Paralympics, is actually in the last knockings of sailing being an Olympic sport. So it's a really serious issue. And if we care about it enough and we highlight it enough, let's hope world sailing actually does something.
I'm going to go back to the super FOSI here. And give us a thumb up if you agree with Magnus in this. I can't imagine that. We've talked about this a lot. John, you have told us about Hannah Stodel, who's on the staff and you say is doing a yeoman's job on behalf of world sailing, but it sounds like maybe she's the only one, John.
Well, by definition, she's the only employer for para in all the world sailing staff. So the very simple and short and simplistic answer to the question is, if you want to know what you can do to help, reach out, talk to Hannah. She'll say what she needs, and if nothing else, she'll feel that she's not completely alone fighting the good fight.
Well, there must be a volunteer group as well, isn't there? Is there a committee, a para sailing committee or something? Conclusion sailing?
My understanding is it hasn't been started yet.
It hasn't? Well, I share Magnus's fear that if we don't get our para act together, Julia, and Magnus and everybody else, we don't get our para act together, you start to wonder if the IOC says, well, this group, they can't get their para act together, so maybe we don't need them in the Olympics. And I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but bloody hell. We've digressed here, but I'm glad we did. Thank you for that, Magnus. Thank you, John Emmett. I'm going to go back now to just wrap up this amazing event. Apparently, it was a fabulous event. I've talked to several people who were there, including this morning James Pleasance, who's the executive director of the World Match Racing Tour, and also a FOSE, who is also a voter. I think Clark sent to you his votes. But there is the podium, Ian Williams and co. in the middle, who won 3-1. That only match that he lost through the whole kit and caboodle, the whole series, was to Nick Agnod-Johnson in the finals when Nick tied it up there, as you saw from Lily's report, 1-1 after the first two races. Ian went on to win, and then in the petit finale, Chris Poole there, his team on the right came out 2-0 ahead of Gavin Brady. And, of course, that's Nick EJ's team on the left in second place. Those are the top three teams. And then if you go through the list to the top 12, it was Ian down through Zach West. Pauline Courtois had a good regatta, the French lady who's seems like perennial world women's match racing champ. She was fifth, and on down the list. And the first ever event in Macau. Those of you who've been to Macau know that there's a lot going on there. It's a very interesting city with the gaming and gambling and so on, auto racing. I've not been there to gamble. I've been there for auto sport, but a terrific event. And speaking of world sailing and the president, here he is in the middle shaking James Pleasant's hand. That's World Sailing President Kwan Hai Lee on the left of the two shaking hands, and congratulating James on the tour's 25th anniversary, kicking off now their 25th year. Great television work. I agree with all the comments here about what a nice job the TV, and Ed Worley said, he kept pinging me all weekend saying the Macau series was really well done, and I enjoyed watching the racing live. It was on YouTube. And Lily did a superb job of the commentary. Her co-commentator, not so much. But Alistair Murray agreeing, say, great commentary from Lily. And I don't know who, John, if you know, who writes those scripts for her or if she writes them, but between the writing, between the verbiage, and between her delivery,
yes.
Wouldn't you agree, Julia?
Yes.
It's just superb. John, do you know who's doing the writing? Is it Lily?
I still haven't got round to chatting with her after the event. But a very big, and that's your fault, Tom. I meant to be talking to her now. But the key thing she said to me is that James's team are given a huge amount of freedom in what they want to do. They're all incredibly passionate individuals, and it's the nicest environment she's ever worked in. And I think that positive atmosphere and everybody's doing what they want to do because they want to do it. Lily was very, very happy. And when you're having a good time, it's easy to do a good job. And yeah, I think she's fallen in love with match racing. So I'm not quite sure what's going to happen with that wasp that's currently sat in a garage. It might go the same way as the laser, and I say laser intentionally, which sat in a garage for 10 years and hasn't had any. I'm exaggerating, but hasn't had any use since before the Rio Games.
You're talking
But
about
I'm not
her
really
laser.
exaggerating.
Her Ilka. Yeah. Well, I'm glad. I mean, I'm not surprised she's fallen in love with match racing. Everybody
Absolutely.
does.
Yeah.
John,
Tom, I've got a question without notice for John and Alistair.
Shoot.
John and Alistair, going back to the Olympics and seeking, inclusion, I've found when I go around to different sailing clubs, and especially with the Tackers group, and asking the administration, "Oh, can you sail?" And almost 90% of them say, "Oh, no, I don't sail. I'm just in the administration here." And I think one of our problems is that those people we're employing should, within yacht clubs, whether it be the Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron or CYC or even Concord Ride Sailing Club or whatever it is, those people should have a sailing background or at least a sailing passion. And I'm interested if what the others think, that why are we employing people who know nothing about sailing?
Good question.
Alistair, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Look, I think it's a very, very good question, Pedro. There's no doubt that the sailing background gives you so much insight into every topic being discussed that's related to sailing, particularly delving back into the history and looking where sailing's heading. It just gives you so much insight. I've hired, for example, Australian sailing administrators, including CEOs that are non-sailors, and all I can say is that if you're a non-sailor, like, for example, the head of our high performance program at Australian Sailing is not a sailor. He's from a rowing background, but he's exceptional at his job. All I can say is that if you hire a non-sailor, they have to be bloody good at what they do. They have to really bring a lot more to the table because having a sailing background gives you a very big head start and a very big advantage and makes it more likely for you to succeed. But there are exceptions.
I don't think anybody on the panel would disagree. Anybody disagree? Give us a okay, Magnus.
Not disagree. Sorry, I would just say that I think it should be a prerequisite for anybody on the World Sailing Council or running for the presidency that they can sail.
Yeah, that's been, I having served on the council for a long time back in the day, and that was a big problem, that you had passionate, knowledgeable, good sailors. The late, great Ding Schoonmaker from our country. You could just go right around the horn, and all the countries, particularly the Anglo countries, always sent good sailors. Robin Aisher from the Aisher family in Great Britain was on the council, was a vice president, and he was a fabulous sailor. His dad was a great sailor, and they knew sailing. And you just had people who were sailors, particularly from the Anglo countries. The problem, Magnus, and the problem, Alistair Murray, you as the past president of the Australian Sailing Federation know, the problem is some of the smaller countries, particularly this time when the voting was going on in Singapore, were from countries who were brought in for, I don't know how or why, were brought in to vote for the presidential election in November, and they were total non-sailors. They just had their ticket paid, and they came and represented their country and didn't know their proverbial ass from their ankle about sailing. Clark? Clark Chapin, do you want to carry on?
I'm just going to give a quick,
Clark,
just a quick one. Oh, okay,
I'll come back,
Clark.
Peter, to you. Clark, can you unmute, please?
Yeah.
I did. And I think one of the best parts of the election process might be videoing each of the candidates in a suitable sized boat attempting to sail around the course, included in the bio information.
Clark not only is a lifelong sailor, but 3 generations of Chapins. Clark's dad, Clark's himself, his wife, of course, but also his son, Billy. And the three, I have a famously good photo of the 3 of them sailing on their 18-foot boat that's indigenous to the Great Lakes area. And Clark, I guess you were driving and Billy was crewing and your dad was crewing. It was just fabulous stuff. Ted Ryman is saying, I thought it was a given that these people were sailors. Who allows these people to run the show? Well, that's exactly the point, Ted, and a very good one indeed. Be careful what you say about those who don't sail. Ha ha, amazing what you see from a mark boat. Yeah, Larry Kennedy. Well, we're talking about people who are in positions of, senior serious administrative positions in clubs, in yacht racing associations, in national authorities, and particularly in world sailing and class associations. Class associations are pretty self-selective. You don't end up as an officer of a class unless you're an active and probably longer-term racer in that class. Alan Long says, yeah, like an opti with a waitress. We're still picking at Hawkinson. Okay.
Hi, Tom.
Go ahead, Gord, please.
Oh, very quickly, I would certainly agree with the comments about people being sailors or actively on the water and aware of it. But I would add an addition to that in that sports management training has come on leaps and bounds in the last 20 years. And also people from outside the sport, I'm not saying should dominate in the sport, but they can also bring different perspectives on the ways of encouraging others to join the sport or activities should be done. So I think it's very important to appreciate quality administration, but also people who are passionate about the sport. I think it's very important you have a competent mix.
Quite right. Good point. Thank you for that. By the way, we're
Tom, just to finish off with what Magnus
Thank you. Go ahead, Peter.
Just to finish off what Magnus raised with the Paralympics and how we can promote and get passion of people to back Paralympics to be back in the sport. And I that's why I'm saying reach out to sailors and get them to lobby. I've spoken to you about what I want to do with our military veterans and engage them in our sport and help them for their mental health. And I'm just looking at some of those won't be sailors, but they will become sailors and they'll be given purpose and passion. So I'm not saying don't employ someone who doesn't know how to sail, but at least give them the opportunity to engage and have that love for the sport, no matter what their age.
Indeed. Are you prepared to make your announcement, not today, but on the show sometime soon?
Oh, yes, but I've just got to get a few ducks. I've got to get a few ducks in a row. So please be patient.
Okay,
I'm dealing with bureaucracy.
I wasn't suggesting that we do it today, but we're excited about what you're doing. You're of all these people, Peter Stevenson, a.k.a. Pedro Foiling Sailor in Sydney, you're the only one, I believe, maybe Clark Chapin's the exception as well, who've actually been here in the studio. I think Andrew McIrvin has been here at the Beach Street Yacht Club, but never in the studio, right, Andrew?
Look, I couldn't believe how big it was, and especially being there with Julia and Julia. There's one thing, just very quickly. There's a place for
Oh my
us.
goodness! Shall I get
somewhere a place for us?
Shall I get the harmonica?
No, not now.
Can we get the harmonica? And let's don't do that. Thank you, Peter.
Oh, I'm coming. I'm coming.
I did walk into the unoccupied studio when you weren't broadcasting just to get a feel for it. So I have seen it.
It's tiny.
Yep, very small.
Okay, gang. I just
but full of promise.
Full of promise. It's tiny. It's what is it? 12 by 12.
Yeah.
3.5 meters.
Yep.
Square.
There's no room for a double bed.
Well, you never know.
Still a bed in there. Yeah.
Hey, first things first.
There's some famous people who have slept on this bed in here. We had who was the yacht designer?
Holland.
Ron Holland was here. We were doing a live show, and we had a in studio perch over there between Julia's table and me here, and he was here for a couple hours. It was a great show. This must have been 3-4 years ago, pre-pandemic. And he said, that bed looks pretty good. Could I go over and take a nap before my next engagement?
and he about 3 minutes later, he was asleep.
He was sound asleep. We couldn't wake him up.
He was tired.
Julia, speaking of which, we're about to do our vote, but since this is our 800th show, and since we have some Alan Embleys, we have another bottle. Where am I? What camera? Under camera one. We have another bottle of Alan's Bourbon Cream. I promise you, it'd probably help your voice, help your throat. Do you want some?
Oh, gosh, it'll help me.
Let's have it. Let's have it here. Get you. And this is in celebration of the Person of the Year, the Sailing/Yacht Racing Person of the Year.
Yes.
The Sail Racing Person of the Year. Mm-hmm. Julia, cheers.
Cheers.
And while she's having a sip, I just want to say to all of you, I've talked a little bit with Clark, but more actually with John Emmett. I have an idea that one of the shows each week, or maybe from time to time, we do exactly this. We invite the Super Fosy and others onto a panel discussion. Everybody's so well behaved.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, it's actually fairly easy to run there's Gordon with this. But I was seriously thinking that maybe what we should do is invite a panel on here and just have a show that's, what do you want to talk about? And we can digress to talk about...
Which we can do very easily.
Which we do, which we do rather easily. Well, if any topic we want to talk about, and gas bag and carry on and get the opinions of all these very bright people from across the planet. I mean, we got people in Europe, we got people down under, and then some. And John Emmett wants to speak to this point before we get to the voting.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely get a power group together to talk about that by the end of the month. No problem. I think that would be a very, very good thing to do. I think I missed the boat metaphorically and literally earlier when you were talking about employment, and I was going to say the only person I employ is a right Crouton, but he does still sail. But actually, when I look at who's employing me, I do think to have managers who've actually campaigned themselves makes a huge difference. I don't know if people realise the Hague Worlds, the director there was Dorian, who won 2 Olympic gold medals in windsurfing. In fact, not only that, he won them with a day to spare. So in all seriousness, it does make a big difference. But yeah, the first discussion, I use the word inclusivity because it's not just about getting power sailing back in the Paralympics. It's actually about making sailing more accessible for all the people. I don't want it to feel like another back the bid. But there's far cleverer people than me who can probably sort of say what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it. And I think that will be a very good first one.
Andrew has emailed a photo to me, I see in a message. Okay, John, well, thanks for that. And the idea of having a regular show where we do just this and not with necessarily an agenda, I think it is very useful for the promotion.
Yeah, and everybody learns a lot. I think.
Well, that's what I mean, the promotion and for the development of the sport, Julia.
Yep.
And it's, I don't have to put a show together, which is the thing that takes a lot of my time, is putting, 100 slides together for a show.
Mhm.
And you look at all these other podcasts, and all they do is sit in gas bag. Well, I don't want to sit here with Julia in gas bag. We do enough of that already. But who'd we lose? John Emmett just went try to take a pee. But if you all are willing and able to come on from time to time and do just this, and we say, hey, Andrew, what's going on in the offshore world? And Andrew can say, well,
well,
what would you say, Andrew? The Sailing Illustrated Roundtable. Ed Worley, why aren't you on this?
Yeah.
Why aren't you on this group? But Andrew, give us before we vote, give us the 2-minute update on what's going on in the offshore world.
Well, I think obviously we've done the Vendée to get given it absolutely the right amount of coverage. I had a very quick flight down to Lanzarote to watch the start of the transatlantic race, which is a Rourke race with the cooperation of Maxi Association and the Yacht Club de France. And it's not a huge entry because obviously it's a big commitment to race across the Atlantic. So they go to Grenada. We started. It used to start in November. Now we start in January. The winds are a little bit more reliable. Trade winds a bit more established. Interesting mixture of boats, 5 multi-hulls, 15 monohulls. And we've got, in the maxis, we've got Lucky, which is the old Rambler 88, Shoes, which is a Volvo, CC, which is an older Volvo, Victoria, which is a lovely Swan 78, Spirit of Helsinki, which is a Swan 651. Then there's a Class 50, a Class 40, and a Carkeep 45, which belongs to the immediate past Commodore of Rourke, Inaugural. They've gone in very different directions to start with. Some went almost due south, some went mainly west.
And these are headed from Lanzarote to the Caribbean, right? We're in the
They're
Caribbean.
going to, straight to Grenada. So it finishes in Grenada. And I'm lucky enough to be flying to Grenada on Friday to meet them.
You saw that our other super Fozy named Andrew Pindar, was making fun of all your traveling.
Yeah, he always does. Although his air miles are considerably more extensive than mine, I should add.
Mr. Doctor, I have another question. Yeah, he's headed to New Zealand for Sail GP, I think.
Yeah.
And that's why he's not on. Patrice Gallo-Rochlin is saying, I'm really enjoying this format today, so informative. And the reason Ed's not on, Ed Worley, he's saying, I'm taking my daughter to her university. And I also want to just say hi to Peter Taylor. Peter and Sandy are on a plane, Julia, headed to Hawaii and watching the show. So I know that. But Mr. Doctor,
I'm jealous.
Before we lose you to the vote, well, we're going to vote, we're not going to lose you. But did you see Magnus the Magnificent's post today?
Yes.
His Rule 69 post.
I wasn't quite sure. I'm always a little bit wary of Magnus because I don't know whether he's building it up to something and then he's going to put the knife into the balloon. But
well, let me ask Magnus before we go on. Andrew, let me ask Magnus to tell us what the topic of his column today, his blog post on his Substack on the Rule 69 blog, because I loved it. Magnus, you can see Andrew is blushing. Go ahead, Magnus.
It's Roaring Rourke, and
what does Rourke stand for? You Brits, tell everybody what Rourke stands for.
Royal Ocean Racing Club.
And your title of your piece was
Roaring Rourke,
and the theme of it was
just how well that club is doing at the moment, and it's lovely as a journalist to write positive copy and to actually be able to highlight when clubs do it right. And you name me, any other prestige club that when you go onto their website has a join now button as the first thing you see.
But the reason Andrew McIrvin is blushing is because the theme of your article, correct me if I'm wrong, was, and the question you asked was, is the RORC, is Rourke the best yacht club in the world?
Yeah. I mean, you look at it, it's celebrating its 100th year. I mean, I shouldn't be shilling for it, it's not my club, but it's 100th year.
I
Admiral's
proposed
Cup.
you.
Thank you. Yes, I haven't got any seconders or anyone else who would write a letter. Though.
Oh, we'll find them.
Yeah, no, I just think they're doing all the right things, and it's really, really wonderful to see. And there's you look down the calendar, Admiral's Cup, Fastnet, all of the classic channel races, and then the IRC Nationals, Cows Week. They've got an amazing clubhouse in Cows that is honestly, it's the best bar in world sailing by a mile. And yeah, it just seems there's really bright people, including Andrew, doing the right thing.
I'm just an ordinary complaining member now.
Even Andrew's bright.
They're just doing the right things, and they are becoming a model for how to attract, and it's becoming an attractive club for younger members. If you look at the pictures that came back from the transatlantic start, and the crew pictures in particular, there's an awful lot of under 35s, and then mixing with professionals, Brad Butterworth, people like that. And yeah, it just feels like a club doing it well. Another club doing it brilliantly well is Manly Sailing Club, who hosted the Moth Worlds recently. They've got dartboards in their clubhouse. Brilliant. Clubs have got to get real with how to attract and keep and build memberships,
especially young people.
Yeah, and I think Rourke's doing a really, really good job. They've got the London clubhouse as well. Yeah, they're on the money.
Magnus, we showed your pictures from when you did a talk there, and you sent some pictures to me. I used them on the show.
Yeah.
Of the new RORC. I guess it's fairly new. How long's that clubhouse in Cows been up and running?
I think it opened in June,
Easter.
July.
No, well, it was in May, really.
But in the last year.
The big mistake was not building a swimming pool. There's no swimming pool in Cows.
It's Cows.
Okay, gang. Thanks for all that. And we did digress from time to time, but it's fabulous to have this collection of experts, of experienced hands, of journalists, of leaders in the sport, to have you all on. And it's time to vote. I don't mean to put it off or slow it down, but I know a lot of people on here are waiting to see what you all come up with. These are the 6 nominees for our inaugural Person of the Year, and we said and why. We'll talk about why. But here are the voters. Some of the voting has already happened. Clark Chapin is the scrutineer. He's the electioneer. Rick Bannera, who's on, is voting. Clark, myself, John, I'm really only going to vote in the case of a tie. John Emmett is voting. Christopher Gillingham has, I think, already sent a vote in to you, Clark. Richard Gladwell, who is at a press conference for SailGP, he texted me and said, hey, I'm really sorry I'm not on. I'll try to get on, but he's doing the presser down there for this weekend's SailGP in Auckland. Claire Harrington is tied up, Vice Commodore of New York Yacht Club. She has sent her vote in. Andrew McIrvin is online. Alistair Murray is online. Andrew Pindar is en route to, if not already there, getting to Auckland for SailGP, and I believe he sent his votes in. James Pleasance is just back from Macau. He sent his vote in. Ryman is on here watching, but he doesn't want to be seen, so little does he know. Julia, look, she shot me a look. Do that look again.
Who's he hiding from?
Exactly. So Ryman, Ted Ryman down in Cape Town. Hamish is on. Jody Shields also is not on, but he is voting. I think he sent it in to Clark. Gordon Smith is on. Peter Stevenson is on. Graham Sweeney, of course. Julia is here. Magnus the Magnificent, and Ed Worley, who is driving his daughter to uni. And Lily, I don't know if she's voted, but John has her proxy in case not. Those are our 21 Super Fozy voters, and they've all been on the show multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons, Julia, why we ended up with them. Not only are they watching the show, but they're on the show, contributing to the show, and therefore, and you say, vote, Fozy, vote, Alan Long is saying, so we will do that. But if you're wondering who Ted Ryman is, because he's the one Super Fozy who's not been on the show, but I can't remember a show that he's missed. And he sends me submissions, links, contributions, jokes for every show. So he has joined the
There he
panel.
is.
There he is. That was his Christmas card. Ted Ryman, who is a smoker, a toker, a midnight. This guy is amazing. There's his partner. He rides motorcycles. He loves to sail fast and slow boats, and he's a hoot, Ted Ryman in Cape Town. He doesn't know I'm running these pictures of him today, but that's Super Fozy Ted Ryman, who is also part of the mix. And now I have asked the panelists who are on via Zoom, Hakan is saying, like Chicago style, vote early and often.
Right.
We've got our 6 nominees, which the nominations, were originally quite a bit larger than this number and came from all of our viewers. And then the Super Fozy pared them down to 6, these 6, Ben, Cole, Pete, Russell, Grant, and Pinar. And I'm going to ask now if any of those on the panel care to pitch any of these folks. And the first one is Sir Ben Ainslie of Great Britain, who had quite a go with not only Sail GP, but also with his America's Cup effort, and who was going to pitch. Did you, Andrew McIrvin, want to say something about Sir Ben? Andrew McIrvin.
Yes, I mean, Ben doesn't need a lot of introduction on his past history with having collected more Olympic medals than anybody ever before. What's, I think, so impressive with Ben is that he's transitioned from being a single-handed sailor, which is a very, very different game, to managing a massive team and the impossible task, which a lot of people, including you and me, Tom, thought was impossible, was to sail the boat and run the team, because the team was, I think, by the end, about 160 people, let alone all the people back in Bracknell crunching the numbers every day. And I mean, the guy visibly aged, but he just kept up the determination. And to go through from when the boat was not performing very well to just keep improving and improving and improving, and then actually win the Louis Vuitton Cup. Sure, he didn't win the cup itself, but each time he's moving up a step, and his determination and his dedication is absolutely unbelievable. So I think why he deserves it is the combination of being a superb sailor and having been a superb sailor at the front of our sport, but also managing the whole of the America's Cup team. So what an amazing achievement. And he hasn't stopped, but he certainly deserves it this year from my point of view.
Well said. Thank you very much. That's Sir Ben Ainslie, who is our first nominee. And our next nominee is Cole Brower. And I think, Gordon Smith, you were going to give us a pitch on Cole.
Indeed, and I think it's an honour to present this amazing woman. I represent her actually as possibly, from a point of view, I'm a completely useless and incompetent sailor, and everybody around me on the site, Sailing Illustrated, and the rest of the Zoomers here, I'm the least competent, but I love the sport. I enjoy partaking in it and just watching it and discussing it. And weirdly, I think Cole has attracted such positive engagement with the sport from around the world, from groups of people who simply don't have access to the sport. I think I would have loved to have seen Ian Williams on this list, GOAT, greatest of all time, easily. But he's not, and I think he's not on this list because of what Cole has done over the last year and the people she's engaged and what she's achieved as a sailor. She's done two things at the same time. So not only done an amazing job in the sport as a sailor and a competitor, but she's appealed to people whom sailing was entirely out of reach and out of their conversation. I think that's fantastic.
Very good point. And she had a huge impact, at least in this country, and I don't know how much beyond. Thank you. Gordon Smith in Denmark, a Brit living in Denmark. How about Pete Burling? Let's see who wants to speak to Pete Burling. and he is our third nominee, Graham Sweeney.
Hi, everyone. He was in the America's Cup. He was pretty much my enemy because I wanted another person to win, obviously my own team. But I've watched this guy right away from the beginning and beyond. I mean, he started his year having a family. I mean, and he was still holding together a team that he'd been nursing to the next America's Cup. I mean, the guy, if you look back into his history, I mean, he's got more medals coming out of his, you know what, than anyone I know. He's an amazing sailor. But this America's Cup, we've got to start thinking about this. This is a new format. They haven't been doing this that long. Okay, he's a fast boat sailor, but he's really defended it. I mean, who hasn't seen this guy go out there? Was it 22 races? He won. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, if you look in you get the other guys here that know a little bit more about the America's Cup than I do. Okay, there was different formats, different boats, different racing styles, but this is a new type of racing, a new type of vessel, a new type of science, and he has taken this on. And if you actually look at the results, he only had 2 losses, other than the Americans in the preliminary. I mean, in the final, and that's amazing. I mean,
it is indeed. And his Sail GP team has won the first event and was on the podium, was in the hunt last year. And the guy has done, he's one of a handful of people who've won the America's Cup 3 times as the helm.
He was sailor of the season in the last Sail GP. The guy is amazing. I think people don't like him that much because he doesn't show much emotion. He has a bit of a sideways smile about him, and that can be seen as a bit snidey looking. And
you think so? I think he's actually quite popular. Let me ask Magnus, who would know better than most of us, having dealt with him in Barcelona this whole time. Magnus, don't you think he's quite popular with everybody? Most everybody?
Yeah, I mean, Pete's he's a great guy. He's a great person to interview. He's very open. He's very helpful. And I've had the pleasure of sitting on an AC-75 literally right behind him. And he one-handedly bore away and was pointing at the speedo at 52.2 knots and giving me the thumbs up. He's a terrific guy. And I think he's, he is the new sort of hero in our sport, and what a guy. He's
so
he's
you
terrific.
Agree with Graham? I mean, he's top notch. In fact, Dolly DeVola down in Australia is saying in the comments, he's saying if Pistol Pete was American, you'd make him president. I don't know about that. Anybody else want to chime in on Pete while we're doing that, or shall we move ahead? Pete Burling, most recent 3-time winner. Dennis Conner before that. Russell Coots, just an amazing talent. And some people think, apparently Gary Jobson in the comments, Chris Exley is saying that he says Gary Jobson considers Burling as the best sailor ever. Burling is a cut above. Well, bravo Zulu to him. Speaking of Russell, that brings us to Russell Coots from New Zealand, who has single-handedly, with the backing of one of the richest guys on the planet, Larry Ellison, made Sail GP happen. Does anyone want to speak to Russell's candidacy as one of our final 6? If not, I will. I didn't nominate anybody myself, but I certainly will put in the pitch that this thing, and I think Stingray, who's on here in the comments, would agree with me, none of us thought, I didn't think this thing would happen, is these pro leagues have come and gone like, yesterday's clam chowder. And I am particularly impressed, having been involved, having tried to get one pro setup going myself with the Super 12 some years ago. Russell, okay, with Larry's money, but still with all these balls in the air and all these inner workings, and now they're putting T-foils on the boats, and the boats are approaching 100 knots. But forget about all that. To get a movable feast, a circus going around the planet and having grown it from just a handful of events and a handful of teams to now where they've got most of the teams, or at least half the teams, owned as franchises with real franchise value. And now, what, 13 or 14 events this year around the planet is, in my mind, a pretty amazing feat and having a huge impact, positive impact on our sport, to say nothing of putting a lot of money into the pockets of these professional sailors who, without SailGP, a lot of them would be struggling. Clark Chapin wants to add.
Two things. First of all, don't oversell it. 100 kilometers per hour, not 100 knots. But second, the point is that television exposure that he's managed to get for the SailGP series is quite remarkable.
Good point. Did I say 100 knots? I meant 100 kph. Did I say 100 knots? Good. Well, I had it in the show notes, 100 K. They got to 97 the other day. We're going to have it after the vote. I'm going to do a SailGP final in the final leg preview for Friday start. Thank you, Clark, for that interesting point. Anybody else will carry on? If not, to our next nominee, our fifth nominee, Grant Dalton himself, who has been at various times not only on the boat, but also leading the America's Cup, and has done, frankly, has had a huge impact on the sport as the leader of the America's Cup, as the leader of Emirates Team New Zealand, who have now won it 3 times in a row. Does anyone want to speak to Grant Dalton's nomination? Magnus the Magnificent.
Yeah, I'm very happy to nominate Grant. I think with all due respect to the Ben Ainsley nomination and the Pete Burling nomination, without Grant, nothing would have happened. And being employed by him and working alongside him, and someone who I now call a friend, I think when he introduced the AC40 and then had the vision for the Youth America's Cup and the Women's America's Cup, as well as the AC75, the new rules that came in around that, the AC virtual game, running the whole show in Barcelona. I've never seen anybody, and I've worked in financial services, I've never seen anyone work as hard as Grant did. It was 5 a.m. in the morning till way past midnight. He was corralling the sponsors, coaxing the team, and it's such a an America's Cup team, as you know, Tom, is such a big entity. And you knew when Grant was in the room, and I just think what he did, what the platform that he's given for the women and the youth was just phenomenal. And then the other thing that people don't really see and get is that Grant was on the water pretty much every day of the training. He's such an integral part of that Emirates Team New Zealand setup, and as well as running sustainability programs, and all the rest of it that goes around the America's Cup. And then he's one of these guys that he's just masterful across a whole range of things. And I think what he's contributed certainly to New Zealand sailing, and certainly to because I remember you predicting that they would lose. There was no way they were going to lose, not with Grant running the shop. And I think he just did an incredible job. And since the America's Cup, I keep in touch with him. And, we're talking about the Paralympic stuff. And what I didn't realize, he's been for the last 30 years a patron of New Zealand blind sailing. And it's these kind of unseen things. He's got fingers in pies everywhere. But I think overall, what he's done for the sport this year is absolutely phenomenal. And that America's Cup was an enormous success on the back of Grant Dalton's efforts.
Well said. Gordon Smith agrees with you. Say Dalton's done an amazing job. John Emmett, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I mean, I could never speak as as well as Magnus, but the whole point of this award, it's Person of the Year, and from a Sailing Illustrated context, love him or loathe him, I think hands down we've spoke about Daltz more than anyone else. That simple.
He does come up fairly often, doesn't he?
Every show, without fail. Nobody else is anywhere close to the amount which we talk about Daltz. I mean, it's not even up for discussion, is it? It's the most talked about individual by it, probably more so than the other 5 put together, I would have thought.
But it's not just about who, what gas bagging I do or we all do on here. It's what major media impact, what is the perception, way broader than not just us in the sport, but people outside of the sport. So it's that bigger impact, I think, that we're all looking at as well. And adults, no doubt, has had a huge impact outside of the sport as well. I think that's true, John. I'm going to just go to the comment here. Gordon Smith has typed in a comment. He said, none of us can speak like Magnus Wheatley. Okay, that's pretty good. Finally, we've got one more nominee, and that is Pinar Koskuner Genk, who the only person I've not met of this group. And I think, Alistair, you wanted to speak to her fine efforts in Marseille.
Thank you very much, Tom. And it's a pleasure to actually nominate Pinar Koskuner Genk. I realise this is a very left field nomination, and it's largely because she's relatively unknown. And when we talk about how much people have been talking about adults, well, nobody's been talking about Pinar Koskuner Genk. And I know, dear Hamish, I know his views on this is that it shouldn't be awarded to an administrator. But I'd like to put her forward as being particularly worthy, and I want to make a few points first. Now, there are numerous yachting awards for the best sailors, and every country has them. We have a fantastic program in Australia. They're in every country for the best sailors. But there is only one Sailing Illustrated Yacht Racing Person of the Year. So I want to stress it is for the Person of the Year, not the Sailor of the Year, though the winner will very likely be a sailor. I acknowledge that, and I'll be more than happy with the result that we all come up with. I also want to stress it is of the year, 2024, not a Lifetime Achievement Award. And for that reason, it's logical, when looking at 2024, that the Olympics and the America's Cup will feature, very strongly in our final list. And particularly, when you look at the nominees, that's clearly the case. And what I'm doing is putting forward the only one in the group that is 100% involved with the Olympics, or was. So to give you a bit of background, she's an active sailor, sailed 470s with the national team for many years, Dragons, etc. She's chair of the World Sailing Development and Regions Committee. She's an international judge. She's an international race officer. She was the PRO at Kiel Week in 2024. I'm only looking at 2024 for this. She was the PRO for all sailing disciplines across all courses at Marseille. I was there. They were extremely challenging conditions. The PROs, the race directors, have the most difficult tasks at all times, and she certainly had that. It was challenging, and I thought she did a sterling job, and I certainly didn't hear any criticism of the race management afterwards, even though the conditions were not cooperative. Here in Australia, because we have we run stats on this stuff, I suggest that it would be similar in other countries. In Australia, 35% of sailors are women, 65 men, but only 10% of race officials are female. So I would contend that in being appointed the PRO at small sailing's pinnacle event, which is the Olympics, unquestionably Olympics, it's a huge event in terms of international exposure, focus on sailing, excellence in our sport. The Olympics is the pinnacle, and we had it in 2024. And I'd contend that Pinar being selected as the PRO at the peak small boat sailing event saw her, in the context of particularly being a female in this role, saw her not just breaking the glass ceiling, but smashing it. The fact that all of the sailing was run by her. And in finishing my push for her, I'll simply say, and I do acknowledge it, it's very left field, I'll simply say, unlike many of the other nominees, perhaps all of them, she does it all as a volunteer. She does it for the love of sailing. So I think she's extremely worthy, and I'd like to put forward her as my nominee.
Alistair, great stuff. Thank you. I think all of our pitches were great. Does anyone, I see Rick Bannerell wants to have something, weigh in, please, here, Rick. Go ahead, Rick. Unmute yourself and please weigh in.
I'm trying. Sorry, I got it. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Good, thanks. I appreciate the patience of everybody on the call and the Zoom meeting. And I don't want to keep the folks at this late hour for their bedtimes any longer. Um, both to Alistair's point and to Gordon's point, I'm going to circle back to Cole Brower for a second and say, while her sailing accomplishments were impressive and the awareness that she brought to the race critical, uh, in my opinion, she represents the new cutting edge of communications on behalf of sailing, communicating the difficulty, the fun, the poetic elements, using modern communications. She's editing. She's got a media team. They're putting out a product that we've never seen before, and she reached a lot of people in the sport who'd never been reached that way. And she really went outside of concentric circles in her communication skills and her team's ability to package it. But you can't package fake for as long as she did it. And there's nothing fake about her. I like the authenticity. I like that sort of first person experience, talking into the camera, narrating, free form thinking. It's changed the way we as a sport can communicate more effectively. And I think all sailing will benefit from mirroring. You don't have to ape. You just have to mirror or take these parts. So that was my point.
Good point. And that's, I think, a lot of the reason that people who did support her did, because of the media work she did and the naturalness and so on. Hamish Ross, and we'll let Hamish have the final word here, and then we'll vote. I guess Peter Stevenson after Hamish.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Just one aspect of Cole and why I selected Cole as my vote in the first round. What really influenced me, and Rick has touched on some of that, but also the fact that she had guts, real guts. I mean, she injured herself while she's sailing the global solo. She carried on with that injury. She suffered dehydration. She gave herself IV fluids. And through all of that, she continued to compete and compete very, very well. And of course, still influence over 500,000 Facebook followers. I think it was 133,000 Instagram followers, and brought many, many more people into some knowledge of the sport and exposed our sport to them. And if you're asking for impact in 2024, that's why I've selected her. I know she's American. I know her biggest impact will be in America, but I just felt all of that together influenced me in my vote. Thank you.
Hamish, thank you for that. And finally, I think Peter Stevenson.
Yeah, Tom, I'm still trying to make up my mind who I'm going to vote for, but I'd just like two people. First of all, I know what Russell does behind the scenes and what he's done for years to inspire and motivate young people into sailing. And a great thing, forget about the commercialization of it. But the other person who's not on the list and has motivated me in the last couple of months is Gordon Ingate. He's 97 years old. He's still out there steering a boat, on regularly on Sydney Harbour. So I'm going, just wanted to put his name up there to say, hey, these sort of people who have been in the sport a long time do motivate and inspire others in a number of different ways. So I suppose you go to your voting now. I think you called him Wingnut, didn't you, Tom?
Well, I've known him since forever, since 1980s, and sailed with him too. Wingnut, Gordon Ingate, and Stevie Ingate, his son, and the family, and we can tell stories. But I think it is time to vote, and maybe the way we look at these nominees. Thanks for that, Peter Stevenson, aka Pedro Foiling Sailor, is that who of these people do we imagine will be Gordon Ingate at age 98, still contributing to the sport, still making a huge positive impression and impact as Wingnut is in Oz and beyond. And it was a long time up in Newport, Rhode Island, even after the Cup, and that's how I got to know him. And it's time to vote, I think. Okay, Clark. Clark Chapin, who is the electioneer. Over to you, Clark.
I
go ahead.
I will say that there are only 2 people that are on this call that have yet to vote, and you know who you are. And so I will leave it open for another minute, and then I will announce the tally.
Okay. Excuse me. I got to reach for my cough switch, Julia. I sound like
me. Yeah.
You can tell me. Tom, use your cough switch. Larry Kennedy saying, while you all are voting, the remainders of you, thanks to all the nominees. Thanks indeed. I think it's a hell of a good panel. And thanks again to all of you. And not just the super Fozy that are voting, but a much larger cast of characters, viewers, regular viewers on here submitted nominations, which we've been reacting to. Julia, did you vote?
I didn't.
Are you going to?
I was only going to vote in case of.
You're leaning to the right again.
I know.
Huh?
Sorry.
There you go.
Sorry.
Not just your politics, but not just you got a MAGA dress on today, too. Not only are you leaning to the right, you got your MAGA red dress on.
Oh.
Are you going to vote? Are you going to tell Clark who you're voting for? Or are you not going to vote?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I was only going to vote if it was needed. But
I'm the one breaking the ties, so
Oh, you are?
You go ahead and vote if you want.
I just say when we were first talking about it and first heard the mission of this. Cole's the first
Julia
person.
Clark needs your vote.
Cole Brower was the first person who occurred to me because she is this was her year. She did ripples way beyond our sport.
Okay, so you're voting for Cole.
Cole.
Okay, because of her huge media impact. I think I've heard you talk about it, and you agree with the media impact that has been articulated here, Gordon Smith
And
others.
she not only participated, I mean, she completed the trip.
Well, you finished second.
And finished
in the race.
Yeah.
Well, it's a great group. I mean, you could justify, I think, any of these 6, and with great pleasure and great pride. So there's your vote, Clark, from Julia. And as I say, you got a lot of people in the chat who are casting their votes, including Fog Machine, a.k.a. Lance Burke, who's saying he still nominates Ferdy, who's our bartender extraordinaire at St. Francis Yacht Club. Clark, how you doing on your scrutineering there?
Mr. Chairman, we have a winner.
We do?
The 2024 Sailing Illustrated Yachtsperson of the Year is Cole Brower, who has achieved a majority of the votes on the first ballot.
On the first ballot.
Wow.
Wow, bravo, Zulu. You got some applause from the gang on the Zoomers. Clark, thank you for that. So do you want to add anything else to that, Clark? Are you surprised we got a win on the first ballot? More than 50%?
Yeah, kind of. But on the other hand, that helps preserves.
Go ahead.
That helps preserve my dinner time.
Well, it's only 6 o'clock in Michigan. So bravo, Zulu. Thank you, Clark. Thanks, everybody else, for your concerted efforts over the last, 4+ weeks that we've been talking about this, maybe even longer. We do have a winner, bravo, Zulu 2. Cole, I had to quickly switch to some slides here to be sure we pulled up the right one. Cole Brower, whom I've yet to have the pleasure of speaking with. I've back and forth with her about coming on the show at some point, and now maybe this will be a further motivation that she would come on the show.
Yeah.
And Clark, thank you very much indeed for your work on this. Thanks to everybody else. Gordon, thanks for your nomination. Gordon.
Very quickly, I'd say I think it's a well-deserved winner. And I want to thank the whole team for a really engaging conversation about the process and values that went into it. It was really quite a conversation, and thanks for everybody joining in. And I'm afraid I need to go now because my computer's running out of battery. But thanks everybody, it was great.
Okay, thanks Gordon for coming on and for the nomination and so on and so forth, your concerted efforts and opinions as we went forward. How about anybody else on the panel want to say something in Magnus? You want to?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very worthy winner. And I think what Cole had was, or has, I'm 100% sure that I discovered her. But that's the trick that she's got, is that she talks to you and you think that you are the only person she's talking to. And that is an incredible communication skill. And she's I mean, I'm following her at the moment, sailing down to Australia. And it's honestly, it's fabulous stuff. And I think she's a very worthy winner.
Good. Great
Nice-
stuff. Thanks.
nice to
Yeah, Andrew Dolly DeVola is saying she's currently sailing, as I guess we all knew, to Sydney with Elizabeth, who has purchased First Light. And I was trying to remember, Julia, apropos Magnus's comments, I don't remember who started pinging on me, if it was John Emmett, if it was Clark Chapin, if it was Andrew Pindar. Somebody said, hey, you should be following Cole Brower. And I went, as a couple of you suggested, went and looked at her social media.
Yeah.
And she had huge numbers
Yes.
of people following her. And yes, she is an American. And this American market is particularly difficult, as you know, Magnus, to break into. You're a media maven, a media expert. You know, it's, I think, somewhat easier to break into the market in Australia and France and the UK, hugely popular sailing countries. But she did really make an impression here early in the year.
Yes.
As she was wrapping up that race. Anyone, Magnus, anything else?
I just think she's incredible. And she sailed into Barcelona, and the American Magic team, I think, greeted her. And she's just class all round. And yeah, I wish her every success going forward. I think she is changing the sport. People like her, people like Hattie Rogers, they're the new stars of our sport. And you know, and the women in the America's Cup were fantastic, and the sport is changing, and it's a positive change with great communications, and I'm really delighted for her.
John Emmett's pledged to help me get Hattie Rogers on the show, and I think we've got to now, as Alan Long is saying, we've got to get Cole Brower on the show. And with that, is there anything else? Alistair, do you want to wrap this up for us?
Yes, very quickly, Tom, because I don't want to contribute to the length of the show more, but when I echo everybody's comments so far and say that I think she's an incredibly worthy winner. I'm very excited for her. She should be thrilled to get the news, and I want to thank you for running this magnificent process, and for Clark and his involvement, and all the Super Fozy for voting. It has indeed been a very robust and engaging conversation, and together we've come up with a magnificent and worthy winner. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, sir. Very, very well said, Mr. President Emeritus of Australian Sailing. Steve Atkins, Commodore Atkins, the Madison Beach Club in Connecticut, saying you, Tom, were blowing her off until we chimed in like a lot of female sailors. Well, I'm not sure that's fair, Steve, but I certainly did take your advice, Steve, and many others who said, hey, you should be checking in and start to follow her on the show, which we did. Which we did, Julia. And not only did we follow Claire, but I mean, it is, I keep saying, and forgive me for repeating, but this is a Fozy-driven show, Friends of Sailing Illustrated. We wouldn't be following the Vendée Globe if it weren't for some of the, John Sangmeister and a few others who said, you got to do this. We wouldn't be following the Middle Sea Race if it weren't for Andrew McIrvin, probably. So thanks, gang. Thank you to all of you. Anyone else for the good of the order before we're going to do a quick preview of this weekend's action in Auckland? Rick Bannerow, you want to wrap it up for us?
As a kid that grew up in West Virginia not sailing, to be part of this panel, I can go to bed, sleep tonight.
Oh, nice.
Just don't take John Emmett's microphone with you. He's got a Shure SM7B. That is on every professional podcast, and now John's got one. I'm going to have to go buy one too now.
At least I don't have to share a twin-size bed.
Okay.
No, thanks. But in all seriousness, that I'm even on a call like this is part of the inclusiveness of the sport. And whether it's dating back to the 80s and helping get started the Rolex Women's Keelboat Championships, the heart's in the right place. And my heart just matches yours. I'm just pleased to be part of this. And many hands make light work. And I think we're all involved in making light work or doing a lot of heavy lifting together.
It's easy from this end, isn't it, Julia?
Oh, yes.
Huh?
Thank God for the Fosies.
Thank God for the Fosies. Okay, everybody, thank you very much. Congratulations to Cole. We'll do our best to get her on the show. And let's wrap up here. We'll go to our Sailing Illustrated's Person of the Year, inaugural, first time ever for 2024. And I guess we'll do this again next year. I think it's gotten quite good. Hawkinson is saying next year we should nominate the CEO of Mount Gay, who makes a big difference in our sport on a daily basis. Well, we could nominate the CEO of Rolex, too, as the contributions they make to our beloved sport, which indeed gets us to the last leg. I'm going to do a couple of videos here. Richard Gladwell sent some great stuff through. But as you all know, it's starting on Friday. I don't think we'll do a watch party. I haven't quite figured that out yet. But it is Friday, Saturday here in the States. It's Saturday, Sunday down in Auckland is the SailGP Season 5 second event, Event 2. And it is there 18th and 19th in the afternoon. They've got big grandstands that are constructed. Apparently the tickets are sold out or virtually so. And the big news is the T-foils. They've gone from the L-foils on the bottoms of the boat. They've been testing them for the last 3 events. And now they've installed them on all the boats. And as Clark reminds us, they, at least the Kiwi team, got to 97 kilometers per hour in tests on Monday and a fair bit of breeze with a big wing. And Magnus would correct this. It's not baptism of fire. This headline should be baptism by fire, I think.
By fire.
Right,
Yep.
Right, Magnus? By fire. You're the cunning linguist among us. Aren't you? Julia, does that deserve a finger wag? We haven't had a finger wag the whole show.
Hear it. Well, I'll give you one.
I said Magnus is the cunning linguist among us. But the headline, Baptism by Fire, high-speed titanium T-foils introduced the SailGP fleet in Auckland. And after nearly 2 years of testing, SailGP has introduced its new high-speed titanium T-foils to the entire F50 fleet ahead of racing this weekend in Auckland. 5 of the 12 national teams trained with the T-foils in Auckland during windy conditions that saw gusts up to 50 kilometers per hour. Could we please use knots, Russell? These aren't the windiest conditions the T-foils have yet been. These are the windiest conditions the T-foils have yet been trialed in following testing in Dubai and San Francisco and resulted in New Zealand recording the aforementioned now many times top speed of 97.2 kilometers per hour. And for extra credit, who knows what that is in knots. Speaking of Fosi, our Fosi Leo Takahashi, who is now the flight controller for Team New Zealand, the Black Foils, New Zealand flight controller Leo Takahashi agreed on the, quote, epic conditions during the first day back on the water, which resulted in, quote, a few pretty crazy moments. All the teams have been saying this. And you definitely feel, he says, that the speeds are a lot higher. The foils are a lot more stable, but at the same time, the acceleration is so quick. It's definitely going to be good racing out there this weekend, especially if we get similar conditions. Here's a photo sent through from today, from Tuesday. It's Wednesday down there now, but from today, Tuesday, testing the T-foils on the Red Bull team, which, of course, is the Italian team. Richard, thank you for that photo. You can see how much breeze they had on the last couple of days, but it's epic. And here is a video from the British team about the training, just a brief video. And I thought this was one of the best videos I've seen in a long time from anybody.
Should be a good day. First day on the tees, new functionality, good breeze, 24-meter length. Looking forward to it. Scrappy, very splashy, but it was pretty cool to see the improvement rate and like the start to the finish of the session, from displacement maneuvers to foiling at the end, and pretty high speeds there, jiving in the 80s. First crack at reaching was pretty interesting, and then yeah, I think the I pretty much expired by the end. My concentration was really pushed today, but looking forward to tomorrow and the rest of the week after that hit out.
Now I'm going to go back to the Fosse. Did you all see how those T-foils are sticking out from the sides of the hull? I mean, the L-foils used to go in under the boat. Now they're sticking out either side. Anybody have an idea on what the implications of that may be? I see you, Magnus, nodding your head yes. Or nodding your head anyway. Magnus?
I'll let John Emmett speak. I think he probably knows more than I do.
John Emmett?
I can categorically say that's not true, but my understanding is the core's titanium and then the outside's carbon. So in event of a collision, it makes it much safer because that carbon will come away. And that's one of the big thought processes in it. But they've actually been a lot of testing and they have already exceeded that 100 kilometers an hour. Unfortunately, I think the ship has sailed, and the chances of getting Russell to go back to knots, it's long, long gone.
So, Dolly DeVoe is confirming. Thanks for that, John. They have a sacrificial tip on the outboard side, so it's a breakaway carbon tip. Peter Stevenson?
Yeah, g'day, Tom. Look, they just copied what I did 15 years ago. Just having a bit of fun. From what I can see, the foil has been lost wax cast as a titanium way of making. And you'll also notice it's got a leeward cant to it. So, being on a catamaran, I think from what I can see, and I trialled it way back on an F-18, you put about a 10-degree leeward cant on the vertical, which gives you as though you're sailing the thing heeled to windward, which provides righting moment and also helps you drive the boat upwind.
And when you say leeward cant, you mean that under the hull, it's lower than the part that's outside of the hull?
Yes.
A leeward cant meaning an inboard cant.
Yeah, but when you look at what the moths do, so the moths are centerline foiling, and they've got a leeward and a rear foil. But the way they're sailed around 10, 15 degrees heeled to windward, which provides a righting moment. On the laser, if you try and foil it with no windward heel, there's no way you can hold it up. If you're heeled to leeward as a vertical centerline foil, that foil is just pushing you over and wanting to capsize it. So we use the weight of the laser, which is 60 kilos, to provide righting moment, because once you get out there hiking on a laser, you can't get back in sometimes. And also the acceleration throws you out the back of the boat.
Okay, we'll go to Clark in a sec, but Hawkinson is saying a collision at these speeds would be rather alarming. And Dolly DeVola is also saying they can now also adjust the cant angle. Now, is that the cant side to side, or is that cant fore and aft? Rob Fry, who is Leo Takahashi's dad, so many smart people on here, and aware and knowledgeable. The titanium is milled, the cant is adjustable. Now, Clark, do you have a handle on that? What does that mean by the cant is adjustable? Does that mean that it's adjustable fore and aft? Or is it adjustable this way? Clark?
I would say first of all, it's probably adjustable for pitch, not roll. And second of all, the choice of velocity units is a marketing decision. So if you're marketing in the UK, you'd want to change the speed units to furlongs per fortnight.
Yeah. I don't know. There's so much derision about using kph, and you could use miles per hour, you could use furlong, you could use what you want, but everybody understands that knots and miles per hour are about the same until you get up range. But still, thanks to, in the comments I see from, it was Mark Holland, wasn't it? Where did I find? Yeah, Mark Holland says that 97 kilometers per hour. What was the guy in that Irish video? What did he call Cags? KGS Cags. The Cags. Mark Holland says 52.48 knots is the speed we're talking about. Anybody else on this? And apparently now I'm seeing several comments. Not only are the Ginzu knives, but the cant, Dolly DeVola is saying, is side to side. Pitch and cant, he's saying now. Clark, pitch and cant. Rob Fry is echoing that. He's saying cant side to side, trimmed fore and aft for adjusting lift. Okay.
That's a great
and Gordon
advantage.
Smith's rejoining us. He found the power cable for his computer, and Rick Bannerow.
Can one of the engineers help Julia with her cant and her tilt?
Yeah, she's tilting right again. That's just her natural political inclination.
Sorry.
Stingray, not all. We welcome Denmark. They're back and forth about Greenland. Okay, nice video from Emirates GBR. Short, too. So it was 50 some odd seconds. Now, here's one from Richard Gladwell.
So, this is your third time in Auckland, third different boat.
Yeah.
How do you feel about going into the weekend?
Yeah, it's. I feel like really good actually being here in Auckland. It's almost like a little bit of home for me.
Yeah.
I've been here so many days, and it's gonna be such a great sailing venue inside here. A little bit compressed, but it's gonna be good fun with who doesn't know, here it's very gusty and shifty.
Yeah.
So this is the best conditions for sailing.
Yeah. How did you find it yesterday?
Yesterday was spicy, and we got some really strong gusts and very high speeds, and in the beginning of the day we're all like trying to get that those data outs and trying to do our routine, and at the end of the day we're just like trying to keep it real simple and just do everything like little things but things right, and it's been really good laugh on the boat as well. Yeah.
So you got your brother on the boat, you on the boat. Where's Torben?
He will be in the future events, but this time he can come.
It's a pretty hard man to keep away.
Yeah.
Have you talked to him much about sort of sailing one of these boats and what his thoughts are on it?
Not heaps, honestly, but it's a lot different from keel boats.
Yeah.
I would imagine, and because I've been doing 49er sailing, it's also very unstable tippy boats, and before I think it helped me a lot with coming into these faster boats, and I don't know, but I'm sure gonna be speaking to Lars when we go to Rio. My uncle, he sailed Tornado, and he sailed so much in the venue, and my dad as well. So definitely want them on board for that event. Yeah.
Martina Grail, who's the first female helm, as I'm sure you all know, helming for Mubadala Team Brazil, and her brother's on the boat, and her uncle Lars Grail. I mean, he's the famously good Grail, whom you know, Julia.
Yeah, Torben Grail.
And Torben and so on. I don't know, Mark Holland, if the rules are changing to widen the stay clearance, but Rick Bannerow's got the final comment that her teeth are as white as the sands of Ipanema. She is the girl from Ipanema. She's a lovely,
she is great,
bright,
and
talented person. Spicy 2025. Steve Atkins liked that description. Anyone who thinks these are tippy boats hasn't sailed a Ranger 37 downwind in a breeze. Okay, one last slide here for this upcoming event, this our Friday, Saturday, Sunday down under in Auckland. The first time SailGP's been in Auckland. It's event 2 of season 5. The 18th and 19th in New Zealand from 1600 to 1730, both Saturday afternoon and Sunday if you're in Auckland. That is here in the States, is Friday the 17th at 1900 here on the West Coast. That will be 200 on the East Coast, and it'll be in the middle of your night in Europe for this upcoming event. Blake Middleton is following Cole and Elizabeth. They made it around Cape of Good Hope today on the way to Sydney. Man, oh man, that is an excursion. That is an amazing excursion. So that pretty well does it for us for our show number 800. It brings us to the D block and the final funnies here. I don't see any hands up. Anybody wanting to comment on anything else, but you're more than welcome to when you see these. we got quite a few today in recognition of show number 800, Julia.
Okay.
Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Here we go. You can guess who this one's from. I just booked us this gig on Fort Myers Beach, which of course is in Florida. They need someone to come down and rid the beach of all the spring breakers in March when all the kids go from colleges in the Northeast and Midwest go down there and beyond, go down to Florida. Claire Harrington,
of course,
who's tied up in Newport, Rhode Island. She's got a lot on her plate as the Vice Commodore of New York Yacht Club. We really appreciate her coming on the show when she gets a moment, as either live or as a viewer, like a lot of you who watch it in replay. Now, this is in follow-up to our Corrector Crutonic from last Friday when we asked, should this be renamed the Gulf of America? And there were precious few of you who thought that was a good idea. And Graham Sweeney sent this through. He says, no, it should be renamed the Gulf of Fragile Masculinity.
Oh.
Graham Sweeney.
That sounds like Graham.
Graham, do you want to comment on that? On your slide?
It speaks for itself, Tom. It's just there. I mean,
you're just afraid that Trump will, after he gets a hold of Greenland, and then maybe he goes after Denmark and Scotland and goes God knows what else.
I just got to say the British did that, didn't they? And they didn't come down too well in the long run, did it?
Graham, thank you for that. Clark Chapin is clapping for you. A lot of people think that was great. Thank you, Graham Sweeney. The next one, this is in honor. Now, Peter Taylor, who's at 37,000 feet, he and Sandy in an airplane headed to Hawaii, as we said earlier. He's still watching the show. I just got a text from him, or in fact, he may have posted in the comments. And Peter Taylor sent this one through. He says it's dedicated to Clayton Embley, soup of the day, bourbon with ice croutons.
Ta-da!
Huh, Julia?
You're right.
You got some of his bourbon cream in your coffee. You've stopped coughing, I noticed, since we put that in your coffee. Huh? Thanks, Peter Taylor. This is just ugly, and you see these from time to time. I couldn't help but put this in. Greg Phillips, who's down in Australia, sent this one, and this could have been a caption contest. I mean, this is the bearded lady if I ever saw one, right? That's just awful. How could anybody let that happen to a yacht? Do we all agree that's a yacht?
Sort of.
Graham, is that a yacht?
The bearded lady.
Not sure on that one, Tom. That's I think that's a reef.
Okay, here's the next one. Speaking of yachts and being on big boats, and he's saying, pushing her through the door into the head, he's saying, you can do it, as the boat's obviously heeled way. I thought that was pretty clever. That came from a relatively new Fozy from Ivo Sankov in Bulgaria.
Oh, yes, he's been on a lot.
He has. He's been on a lot lately, and he's sending through some things, and I appreciate Ivo. I think that's really... Gordon Smith said that previous boat looked like an oyster bed. Now, this one came from Ted Ryman, so if you have children in the room watching on your computer, you may want to send them out of the room, Julia. The dog says, I have a heart on my head. And the cat says, good for you. You got it. Julia finally got it.
I have to look at the picture.
You got to look at the picture.
I know.
Don't look too hard. I didn't mean that. Don't look too closely.
I know.
Look, Bannerow is finger wagging from Bannerow. McIrvin left in disgust. Come on, I thought that was funny.
I'm still here.
Oh, he's still there watching. He just had to turn off, so he was afraid I'd come to him and show him in the same frame as that. Sure. Thank you, Ted Ryman. You're a hoot. And finally, summing it up for all of us, if this were a caption contest, and I've had this one sitting in my file of funnies that I keep on the hard drive. Caption contest, and I think this one, Magnus Wheatley.
World Sailing's decision process.
Anybody else want to Clark Chapin like that? He's applauding, or was. Anybody else want to try a caption to this one? John Emmett.
It's missing 2 letters.
Missing 2 letters. As in U.S. sailing. We're going to talk about U.S. sailing next Friday. You guys are not going to believe what's going on. It's, well, you might, but it's sad. I mean, I'm not taking, there's no schadenfreude from me about this.
No.
But the caption of that is relative to U.S. sailing. This is warning once in, never out. This is the caption that was sent with this. And obviously, this is one of those deals where somebody has, where's my camera for here? Somebody has taken this and photoshopped sailing it on top of whatever was there. But I like it. Ted Ryman's on. Is this the men's room? Okay, finally, we're to the end after 2 hours and 35 minutes, one of our longer shows in a while. We are to the finish line. Well and truly, and Julia, you like to say?
Like, follow, and share. But I also say, because this is our 800th show, we try a little experiment, and everybody share at least to their
own Facebook page,
or maybe publicly.
Okay.
And we'll get a huge new explosion.
We're not in for the views, although we appreciate it. You're right. We appreciate it. But we still get 1,000 to 2,000 views every show. I was going over this with John Emmett the other day and a few other people, and they were amazed how many views we get in replay.
Yes.
And we leave comments open. They're welcome, even in replay, as we're saying in the slide. Tier DeYoung, thank you. Andrew, Dolly DeVola saying, sailing is amazing.
Oh,
that's pretty clever.
That's a good one.
That was pretty clever. Bob Walker, very good show today. Thank you, Bob. I think, gang, I do think people like having a panel of you on here. I mean, that was very popular when we did the watch parties for the America's Cup. And I know you can't do every show by any means, but you and others who are willing and able to come on, I think could add a lot to the shows. And maybe we...
At least once a month or something like that.
Yeah, we designate a show from time to time, Julia, and do just that with the panel, the Zoomers.
Yep.
Thank you very much. We also appreciate all of you who support us, become patrons or otherwise, patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated, and a host of people contributed to today's show. Thank you very much indeed for all who gave us audio, video, and images for today's show, including some of the Zoomers. I also want to say a special thanks to all the Zoomers, not only those that are on here on the Zoom today, but all of the 20 or 21 folks, including you, Julia, who helped do this whole process. Steve Adkins is saying Friday's show will be the one, save U.S. sailing or let it die so it can be replaced. Steve, you've hit the nail on the head, Commodore Adkins. You are exactly right. That is what is on tap for Friday's show. We're going to do a bit of an expose. I'm going to tell you what's going on. It's a sad situation. I'm not sure the organization can be saved at this point. Clark Chapin will have a view. He's been a huge contributor to sailing, U.S. sailing over the long haul. And we'll see what we have to say about all that on Friday's show. We'll also do a bit more preview of, no doubt, of what is going on in Auckland. But in the meantime, U.S. sailing is deeply in the red. And we'll preview Sail GP, and we will do a U.S. sailing expose with the latest, the details, the gory details on our Friday show. Same time, same channel. Thank you for joining us today. Hope you can join us on Friday. In the meantime, have a great rest of your week. And wherever in the world you are, go sailing. Sail fast. Sail safe.
Share.
And have fun.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all. And thank you, Julia. And we're out. Thank you very much indeed.